First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have 6 sets of minutes to approve tonight. We'll take them one at a time. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 13th.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of October 7th?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting of October 14th?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of October 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of November 2nd.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 2nd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of December 2nd?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. We have none to receive this evening, so we'll move on to continuances. Tonight we have 2 items being continued, item 5A and 5C. Item 5A, a request of Benjamin J. Contessa for approval of an administrative subdivision to transfer 1,960 square feet of land from one existing lot to another. Property located at 183 Walcott Avenue, Plat 115 SE, lots 282 and 283. May I have a motion to continue this item?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Paul, just, Ron, are we outside of the envelope? Did the applicant agree to this? Based on, don't they need to,
Which item are you on?
5A.
5A, says Contessa, right? Don't they need to, do we need to take action? According to your memo, we do. December 8th meeting, unless a continuance is agreed by the applicant.
Right, the applicant requested the
Oh, they
continuance.
did?
Yes.
So that's not what, that's what I was asking.
Yep.
Okay. Very well, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item 5A is continued. It's continued to our next regular meeting of January 12th. The other item to be continued is item 5C. A public hearing, application for development plan review, including requests for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, by Endeavor Holdings LLC, for redevelopment of a commercial property and construction of a 2,107 square foot, 2-story building located at 100 and 102 Valley Road, Tax Assessors Plat 113, Lot 19A. May I have a motion to continue this to the January 12th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item is continued to the January 12th meeting. At this time, I also want to announce that we will be shifting a couple of items on the agenda. Item 4G will be moved up to be the next item, and item 4F will be moved to the end after item 5E. So the next item to be considered is item 4G. Discuss a policy for removing items that are repeatedly continued from the planning board agenda. The town solicitor prepared a draft of rules of procedure for the planning board. Are there any comments from the members of the planning board?
Paul, I do have a couple of comments.
Bill?
Thank you. So Peter, I'll just ask you, I'll put it out there, and you can just maybe ask. So under item number 12, on page 2, I guess, following presentations by the applicant and any, quote, formal objectors. Can we get clear on,
We could say any represented objectors or objectors represented by counsel, because I think that's, what we're trying to do is just sort of codify what's been the standard practice in front of the board.
Okay.
So perhaps that would be a more accurate
I think so.
reading. Okay, so we'll
Any
change that
formal-
to any objectors represented by counsel.
that makes sense. The next item, 13. Many times when we're up here and we're listening to presentations and debate back and forth, and we ultimately, quote, close the public hearing, right? And what inevitably happens is we have discussion with the applicant, and some of the public chimes in, and we find ourselves, I know it's more of a control thing, but I was hoping for a little more clearer language that once we close the public hearing and once there's a motion, then we need to move on, we need to take action on it and not engage with.
Well, once again, I think that's not necessarily a function of the rule, it's a function of how it is enforced and how it's handled. I mean, and conceivably, there could be a situation where, the board votes to reopen the public hearing, and if I'm here and, I'll try to, make it clear the public hearing's been closed. If you want to have additional discussion outside of the board, that you need to reopen the public hearing so that we have it on the record. But I think the rule, I think, is fairly clear. It's just how you apply it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think the only time we've done that, Bill, is when we needed some additional clarification before taking the vote. We don't normally have that kind
Yeah.
of discussion.
I'd agree with that.
There are some times when applicants disregard the fact that the public hearing's been closed, so.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that we can deal with, though, but I think there are times when members have questions that need to be clarified before they vote.
and that's,
Yeah, and I think if we just go through the chair and the chair determines whether it's appropriate to
Yeah.
open the public hearing.
okay. I just wanted to make it a little more clear, but that's clear enough for me.
Okay.
Thank you. Number 16, item 16, this is our 9 o'clock rule. Hopefully, we don't have to engage it tonight, but it sounds like we
And
might.
I know that the chair has suggested where it says, any agenda items not reached before 9 PM will be continued. We'd
Any
like to change that to
application
any applications not
Items,
reached.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll make that change.
And
And then while we're on that one, if you change that to application items, then you can add non-application items not reached before 9 PM may proceed or be continued at the discretion of the board.
that's kind of what I was looking
Yeah.
for. Give the board has the ability, so we have the ability to, if we feel an application, kind of like what we went through the last month. If the board agrees by consensus or vote if need be, then we can do it. That language, I think, will clarify it for me.
Okay, so we'll say any non-application items may be reached or continued at the discretion of the board.
That's it. And I'd like to see, and I know it, so I guess, Peter, this question I think in my mind, and I did this several days ago when it first came out, we're trying to maintain consistency with what you've done for the zoning board, is that correct?
Well, if you recall, the discussion about this came up with the issue of so-called zombie applications.
Right.
And having some standards on how to deal with those. Because many of these same applications are also pending before the zoning board, it made sense to have a consistent policy
Right.
with both bodies. At the same time, you know, both the town code and the state law authorizes the planning board to adopt rules of procedure, and it didn't seem to make sense to adopt just one rule. So that's why we drafted the full set and included that rule within it, so.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. So I guess what,
And at least with the discussions with the zoning board, I anticipate that the zoning board will be adopting a rule that mirrors that with
Perfect.
regard to the zombie applications. Had the same discussion with that board, and they're
Okay.
in
So-
agreement with that. condition.
along that thought process, this is what got me to my item, and it doesn't, maybe not necessarily needs to be part of the policy, but we have a, kind of, it's been a policy, or it's been a part of our agenda practice, and Ron's done a great job, and for the record, I think, you know, Paul, you were in a great meeting, and Ron, of course, you know, I've praised the staff often here, because they are wonderful with what they do. Ron, you've always provided for us on our agendas, copies of the most recent decisions, which I like. I like getting that. My thought process was the decisions itself would be fine, or if we're inclined to maybe add an item in here. I don't necessarily think having the decision would be necessary, but maybe a summary of what happened. You know, you do a good job of summarizing in all of your documents, but summarizing previous decisions, it just kind of jogs my memory. I don't necessarily need the document. That's just me. And again, I don't know if it needs to be a policy, but I would just put it out there, and if need be, to make it as part of this document. But I like the practice of having some recollection of what we did in the past. It just kind of keeps it fresh, you know? You follow me?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking me to provide.
Nothing. You're doing it now. What you're doing now is great. And my thought process had to do with consistency. And it's nice to have, particularly in light of some of the appeals that we have going on now in front of the zoning board from us. We get those decisions regularly. I think if you recall way back when I asked, and you started to provide all of the written decisions for us, and you still do that, and that's a great
Right.
practice.
Yep.
I was just suggesting that maybe a summary might be a little easier for you, or in the,
A summary of what happened at the last meeting?
a summary in
Minutes.
the minutes, not even a summary of the meeting, just a summary of the decisions. But I'll pull that back, because it's clear to me why. I don't think we need to put it in there, but I'll just,
Right now, he just copies the memo, the decision memo.
right, and that works for me. I just thought it's nice to have that and kind of memorialize that and keep that going forward.
If I can add to that, I think we've also, in our discussions with the town council, asked for the same thing. If we send something to them and they don't approve it, I think we need to understand the reason why, and then if there's a remedy, we can attack it right away. So I think both of those would be good.
And
Yeah.
I think that's actually been helpful in the recent past
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
a couple of things that have come back
Yeah.
and then gone back up and
Okay.
been approved.
Yeah.
So.
I'm good with that then. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Any other comments on this proposed rules of procedure?
I think it's well done.
Very well done.
Thank you. I have one other comment, Peter. On item number 11, on an application requiring a public hearing, the board will hear from the applicant, formal objectors, and et cetera. Is that only for public hearing items?
I mean, I think it's the practice that you follow on other items as well, so we can,
I mean, we've done that on just about every application.
okay.
Can we say all matters of the planning board?
Yeah, that's fine. I can say all matters, including matters requiring a public hearing.
Yeah, that
And once
would be
again, we'll
good.
change the wording from formal objectors to objectors represented by.
Yeah.
That's perfect, Peter. Thank you.
That's good.
Add something?
Sure.
Peter, I think I've mentioned before, a lot of times, well, most of the time, when a formal application comes in, there's usually an attorney, and there may be 4 or 5 other experts testifying for the application. And that can take 45 minutes plus. However, what I find out of balance is when an objector or a person with concerns about that particular application gets up to the podium, they are extremely limited to usually 5 minutes. And I don't think that's that's really imbalance, and I'm not sure how to correct it, or if we should, but, I mean, after
Well,
the application goes for 50 minutes, and then some poor guy who lives next to it has a problem, and he gets shut down in his 5 minutes, I think
Well,
that's...
that's certainly the discretion of the board, that the rules don't
Yeah.
limit that. So I think the times when we might have had a room full of people coming in to talk on the
Right.
same application, there may have been some attempts to try, for the sake of getting everyone heard,
Yeah.
trying to limit it somehow. But once again, that's always at the discretion of the board, and I think the board's done a good job of that. in the past.
I think that's a great point, Art. And I think the point that I try to make, and I think people that have seen me speak, is if you are an objector to an application or an interested party, you don't have to necessarily be an objector or a formal objector, the planning board's staff and office door is always open. Get those questions answered prior to coming here, because there are many questions that we sit up here, we don't have those answers. The staff does it day to day, but I would encourage the public to use the staff that we have here, because as I've said before, they are excellent, and they will make the time to sit down. So if you can prepare yourself ahead of time, that can limit the time that they need, or get those questions answered and not necessitate them to have to talk for 50 minutes. Not necessarily the applicant, but the objectors, as you suggest. So, but yeah, utilize our staff. They are very good. Thank you.
Any other comments on these procedures? Peter, could you summarize the changes that we requested?
So with regard to item 10, we changed the wording from each application requiring a public hearing to all applications, including applications requiring a public hearing.
Number 11.
11.
11, excuse
Yeah.
me, would change the phrase from formal objectors to objectors represented by counsel. That same last change would also be made with regard to item 12, and with regard to item 16, amended so that any application items not reached before 9 o'clock would be continued to the next regular meeting or special meeting if so scheduled, and that any non-application items not reached before 9 a.m. may be discussed and acted upon or continued at the discretion of the board.
Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to approve these procedures, including the changes as outlined by the solicitor?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved, and these procedures are adopted. Now I'd like, with these procedures in place, to move to item 4A. Application of Jack Gullison for development plan review, including requests for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown rules and regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, section 521, for construction of a new commercial building to include a 17-room hotel with a restaurant and associated site work located on property identified as 59 Quidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 115 SE, Lot 169.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see Mr. Lynch here, but I can update the board on this. From a procedural standpoint, I know this one has been hanging around.
It goes back to before August of 2020.
So there is an appeal that is going to be taken from, there's a determination by the building official, zoning officer, that the applicant, in addition to the relief that they have requested, also needs a variance from the minimum lot size required for a hotel. The applicant disagrees with that. The applicant is taking an appeal of that determination to the zoning board. I would expect it's probably likely that that will be further appealed to the Superior Court. And once the court makes a determination on that issue, that it will eventually make its way back to the planning board. So this
So,
ultimately,
sounds like it would be appropriate to table this one.
yeah, I would continue it 1 month until all of that is in place. Then I think we would table it at that point in time.
So, may I have a motion to continue this to the January 12th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue Item 4A to the January 12th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item 4A is continued to January 12th. Item 4B. Public hearing, application of GD Middletown West Main I LLC for development plan review, including request for waiver from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, and recommendation to the Zoning Board of Review regarding special use permit application for development in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District to allow construction of a ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation on a property located at 1747 West Main Road, Plat 111, Lot 9A. This item was first appeared on August 12th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, is that still a public hearing that's open? It is advertised as a public hearing.
Public hearing has not been opened yet.
Not been opened yet?
The issue with this one is that the plans have not yet been reviewed by the TRC. That review is not complete. It started a while back, and issues were raised by the staff, town staff, about the condition of the survey and easements on the property, and TRC has not reconvened until, and will not reconvene until that issue is resolved. I think Mr. Martland probably wants to add something.
And if I can just follow up on that, I actually had a meeting earlier this week with the town engineer to try to flesh out the exact issue that is holding this back from moving forward, and I will be scheduling a meeting with Mr. Martland to go over that so that we can try to, I think we've identified the problem, and, I can talk with Mr. Martland and try to see if we can move that. But
Would it be appropriate to continue this to the January 12th meeting, and if progress is not made, that we withdraw without prejudice at that meeting? This has been on for almost a year and a
Yeah,
half.
I'd make that decision in January based on the circumstances that are applicable at that point in time.
Sure,
But
sure.
I think we'll have an update for you, because as I said, it's gone back and forth, and I do have some information to share with Mr. Martland, based on the discussion I just had, actually Tuesday.
So
I'll make a motion then to
continue
that.
this item to
To
January
January.
12th meeting.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This item is continued to the January 12th meeting. The next item is item 4C. A public hearing, application of Juan Campos for preliminary plan approval of a 5-lot subdivision, including extension of an existing town road. The property is located at the end of Serenity Drive, with frontage also on Maidford River Road, and is identified as Tax Assessors Plat 120, lots 68A and 68B.
Do we, again, this is a public hearing, do we need?
Yeah, may I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion made.
Second.
A motion is made and seconded to open the public hearing. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is open.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. J. Russell Jackson on behalf of the applicant, Juan Campos. Members, as you recall, this property currently is constituted by 2 large lots, lots 68A and 68B on Tax Assessors Plat 120. The subject property is over 400,000 square feet with 318,972 square feet of developable land. We are in the R40 zone. As you recall, in March of 2020, we were before you on master plan application, and at that time, the applicant had presented 2 proposals as required by the ordinance, one for a conventional subdivision plan and also for the conservation subdivision plan. And pursuant to our request and pursuant to your findings, it was determined that the conventional subdivision plan for this property was appropriate, and ultimately this board granted master plan approval for a 5-lot conventional subdivision. So we're here this evening before you on preliminary plan approval. We want to just highlight quickly before I bring up our witnesses. The dimensional requirements for this, the zoning dimensional requirements here are met by the proposed 5-lot subdivision. These parcels will all be serviced by municipal water, municipal sewer, and natural gas. There'll be no wells on these parcels. There'll be no septic systems. The preliminary plan was fully vetted by the TRC. We had a number of meetings before them, and it ultimately received a positive recommendation. And this preliminary plan also received a positive recommendation from the Conservation Commission. So tonight we have Lynn Small, who's the project engineer, and we also have Paige Bronk, who is our planning and zoning expert. So those are the two witnesses we would like to present this evening, if it pleases the board. So I'd like to call first, please, Lynn Small.
They got to present. They may address it. If not, we can ask.
Evening. Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers, 6 Valley Road, Middletown.
Lynn, if you could just, why don't you start by giving a general description
Could you use a hand mic so it's
I'd be
recorded?
happy to.
It's coming?
Lynn, if you could just give us a general description of the project?
Sure. The project is located at the end of Serenity Drive, north of Maidford River Road. It was formerly before you as a 3-lot subdivision several years ago. One of those lots was acquired by the Aquitanic Island Land Trust, and the 2 lots that have frontage on Serenity Drive were acquired by my client, our client, the Camposes. They would like to re-subdivide those 2 lots to provide for 5 single-family homes with the extension of Serenity Drive into the development. The wetland associated with Maidford River is located at the east side of the development, off-site, approximately 200 to 300 feet. There is a wetland that's associated with that river, which extends into the east side of the property and is subject to a 50-foot perimeter wetland. The site itself, by zoning, allows for, I believe, 7 lots, 8 lots. 8 lots by density calculations. The applicant is proposing 5. We will reconfigure the sewer easement that was established to do better work with the 5-lot subdivision. The developers have also agreed to bring in municipal water from all the way down Serenity Drive into the development, including associated hydrants. The project was submitted to the RIDEM, who did a thorough review of the stormwater design for the new roadway and houses. We have a series of drainage features that are located on the east side of the property as the site drains towards the east and Maidford River. We have swale systems, pre-treatment, a sand filter, and ultimately your stormwater detention basins. These have been reviewed by the DEM wetlands and RIPTES programs at the state, as well as the local TRC, town engineer, and third-party reviewing engineer retained through the town by the client. We have made modifications to the designs based on the recommendations before the TRC. Many of the conditions of approval that you find in the narrative that Ron provided you have already been addressed and reflected on the plan. For example, we revised the drainage basin so that it provides the separation to qualify for groundwater recharge. We relocated the hydrant within the site so that it's it's on the lot line of between lots 1 and 2. And we prepared the calculations to support the berm integrity so that to prove that it will not fall over when the basin is filled with water. Those calculations have not been formally submitted to the town, but we did prepare those in-house, and I can testify that the berms are suitable and will not disintegrate if the basin is filled. That was a request by the third-party reviewer at the last TRC. I think that basically brings us to the overall development. Like I said, the lots are bigger than required under the ordinance because the overall project size supports up to 8 lots by the density requirements, and we're only proposing 5.
Lynn, so just to be clear, there were a number of conditions at master plan approval stage, a couple of which were particular to being satisfied here at preliminary plan stage. I just want to confirm that we've gone through those and we've, at least from your perspective, met those requirements.
Yes, the recommended conditions of approval, I think there were 7 of them included on the memo that you had received. One is the stability of the stormwater detention pond. We have done those calculations and will be formally submitting them for review by the planning department. We have redesigned the detention basin so that it's out of the groundwater, so we can provide the groundwater recharge without requesting that waiver.
Lynn, let me just step in for a second. I just wanted to confirm that's our preliminary memo from the planning department. Let's just take a step back to master plan approval. There were a couple.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were a couple requirements that we needed to make sure we met before preliminary plan was to be considered. So one in particular, prior to preliminary plan approval, design of the proposed sewer line and access within those associated easements must be reviewed and approved by the Director of Public Works. We've satisfied that requirement, correct?
Yes, we have.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to allow you to describe to the board and remind them where the proposed sewer line is going to be and what we are doing with the existing sewer line, which was initially installed by the previous property owner as part of that 2-lot subdivision or 3-lot subdivision.
Along the western property line, we have an existing 6-inch sewer main that was installed as part of the previous approved subdivision. That sewer main will be filled and abandoned in place. So basically, this is the procedure so that you don't have any accidental connections to a line that's disconnected from the main. The new sewer main will come down the extension of Serenity Drive towards the cul-de-sac and then run down the property line between lots 4 and 5 and connect into Maidford River Road sewer system.
And there is an access easement that will be part of this development where the new sewer line is going to be located, which will allow not only the lot owners to maintain, but also in the event the town needs access, the town will have access to the sewer line. Is that correct?
Correct. We have an access easement that's along that boundary line as well, which the sewer department or Department of Public Utilities has reviewed.
Another condition at master plan stage regarded the location of the fire hydrant. I think you've already mentioned that. That was, again, discussed during TRC meetings between master and preliminary plan hearings, and we've met the requirements of the fire department in terms of the location of fire hydrants. Is that correct?
Yes, the fire department asked that we relocate the fire hydrant to the property line between lots 1 and 2. That is reflected on the site plans you have.
I think the only other particular requirement at master plan level relating to preliminary plan was a verification of the lot yield, and you've already discussed that. We're well below the lot yield in terms of the square footage available here for development. Is that right?
Yes, we have reviewed that and updated any calculations on your site plans that you have in front of you.
So moving forward now, why don't you just describe to the board, if you could, the discussions that took place during the TRC process and what your stormwater management system consists of and how it will operate.
So most of the comments that we received regarding, through the TRC were related to the stormwater system, clarification, revisions to some berm heights and widths, the slope of the cul-de-sac. We wanted to make sure the easements that were reflecting on the plan were actually wide enough to actually use with a mower and for long-term maintenance around and within the basins. We have made the revisions to the plans. The road profile was adjusted so that we don't have any cut due to the elevated water table. We have enhanced some of the easements that we provide for the stormwater system so that in the event that the town needs to come in, they can come in and do maintenance and back charge the association for said maintenance. The easements have also extended all the way to the perimeter wetland so that they can be ensured to mow the backside of the stormwater berm. The freeboard was increased from, I think it was 0.8 feet to 12 inches, as recommended by the third-party reviewer. The berm width was enhanced. We also included a core barrier within the berm so that we wouldn't have a situation where the berm becomes saturated and disintegrates or has any breakout issues through the berm width. And then, of course, we raised the bottom of the system itself so that we would provide separation from the water table for groundwater recharge. We also had revisions prior to the TRC that we had made based on recommendations from the state. And those were all reflected on the plans that you have in front of you.
So I'm just going to go through, if I may, quickly the recommended conditions from the TRC and have you explain to what extent they've been satisfied or can be satisfied, both through preliminary and up to final plan approval. So the first condition was prior to final plan approval, calculations relative to the stability of the stormwater detention pond berm design shall be provided, subject to approval by the town engineer. Why don't you just discuss how this issue came into discussion during the TRC and again, what you've done to address that condition or proposed condition from the TRC?
So the basin obviously has plenty of width on the berm to withstand the pressure that you would have from the stormwater that's detained on the upland side of it. The third-party reviewing engineer requested that we provide the calculations to demonstrate this. We have preliminary completed those calculations to demonstrate this. They haven't been formally submitted to the town, but we have over an 8.0 safety factor on the width of this basin. So it is more than suitable to hold back the water that it will have to during a 100-year storm without any issues.
So again, when we talk about the berm, we're talking about that earthwork or dividing area between the sand filter, the sand basin, and the water retention area, is that correct?
The sand filter and the detention basin. Previous comment during the TRC, the third-party reviewing engineer asked us to add a core barrier within the down gradient side of the detention basin itself to ensure that it didn't become oversaturated and disintegrate. So that was already done on the plans that you had prior to the last revision that we had submitted on December 1st.
And just to be clear, this same request was not made by DEM, was it?
No.
No. So it met the requirements of DEM in terms of the integrity of the structure, the proposed
Right.
berm, which divides the sand filter area and the water retention area. Is that right?
Yes, this did not come up at all in any state review. This was something that the third-party reviewing engineer brought up.
Okay. Now, the second condition, prior to final plan approval, the applicant shall submit a redesign of the detention basin to demonstrate the ability for groundwater recharge or request a waiver of the recharge requirement from the planning board. Now, you did do a redesign, correct?
We did lift the bottom of the drainage basin so that it maintained, there was a small, tiny corner of the drainage basin that didn't fully 100% comply with the recommendations in the stormwater regulations. The state did not find that it was a substantial issue, but the town's third-party reviewer did, so we lifted the basin to address it. That revision is reflected on the plans that you have in front of you that were submitted December 1st.
Another change to the plans, small change to the plans that were submitted on December 1st relates to item number 3. Prior to final plan approval, the applicant shall secure approval from the town council to abandon portions of the Serenity Drive right-of-way unless a revised plan is submitted demonstrating that abandonment is not necessary. So again, this relates to the existing radius of the cul-de-sac, which was created as a result of the previous 3-lot subdivision, correct?
Yes, you can see on the plan that you have up in front of you, it's basically sheet 4 that you have in your packet, which happens to be the one that's on the screen. The cul-de-sac that was established as part of the 2-lot subdivision to provide its frontage wasn't comprised of defeasible easements, so it's basically a right-of-way, and we can't just get rid of them without having the town council formally abandon that portion. We have ensured that the subdivision works with those cul-de-sac bumps, if you will, extending into Lot 1 and 5.
So in other words, the original north and south curvature or radius of that original cul-de-sac area was planned to be incorporated into lots 1 and lot 5. Is that right?
Yes,
And that issue came to light during the TRC meetings, and that's what gave rise to recommended condition number 3, correct?
correct.
So as a result, you've done a minor redesign of lots 1 and 5, so we no longer incorporate any land area which is owned by the town of Middletown, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we've satisfied item number 3 on the recommended conditions.
Correct. So the land area does not include any of that right-of-way area, and you still have your developable land area required for Lot 1 and Lot 5.
So have you had the opportunity to review the remaining recommendations of the TRC? I mean, I think the ones we just went through were the most sort of engineer-sensitive, if you will, or related, so.
Yes. Yes, item 4, which was the next one, was the hydrant, which we explained that we had shift that between lots 1 and 2. And it does say that the sewer easements, once established, need to be reviewed by the town solicitor, and that the development fees must be paid, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, I'm going to follow up with just a couple questions. The parcel to the east is owned by the Aquidneck Island Land Trust, is that right?
Correct.
And at some point, that property connects to the Maidford River, right?
Correct.
And so I'm just curious, what is the distance of our client's property line from the Maidford River? And more importantly, what's the distance of those wetlands and the developable area? Could you just describe the relationship of our client's property to where the Maidford River is located?
Sure. On the plan that you can see on the screen, the Maidford River is shown as a large dashed line towards the very right of the screen. And then we have a 200-foot setback, which is the tighter dashed area that is east of the subdivision that we're talking about. Then it's probably about 100 feet to the property line, and another 100 feet to the edge of the wetland, and then another 50 feet to the edge of the perimeter wetland where the project actually starts. So it's pretty conservative to say that we're about 400 to 450 feet away from the Maidford River.
And obviously, you've taken that into account as part of the stormwater management design for the entire subdivision, correct?
Correct.
In designing the stormwater management for the entire subdivision, you made certain assumptions regarding what the impervious area would be for each lot. Is that right?
Correct.
Can you just go through that analysis with the board?
So that we can try to provide a stormwater system that meets the overall development of the project while you don't have the final house designs for each of the 5 lots, the final layout for each of the 5 lots. Those would all be reviewed when they get their building permit under that process. But we do have to make an assumption on how much area those lots might be developed with. For this project, we've allocated 3,000 square feet of impervious area for each of those lots. Now, that is usually the footprint. So that's a really large footprint because most houses are 2 stories. And that's impervious area, not decking or pervious patios or pools. It's, you know, if you want to put in a 1,500 square foot footprint and a driveway that's paved in 1,500 square feet, that would be impervious. We do have the design calculations allocating 3,000 square feet of impervious area plus stone driveways. So there's some extra space in those stormwater calculations. When each homeowner goes to pull their building permit, we will be able to make sure that they comply with the overall drainage design for the project.
So just to be clear, the design meets a standard or meets, you know, you've factored in 3,000 square feet of impervious surface. That may be combination of paved driveway and dwelling, or it may be a stone driveway and a larger footprint of a building, correct?
Correct.
So what would happen if an individual lot owner was proposing to develop that parcel and create a situation where there was more than 3,000 square feet of impervious surface?
So if someone had proposed a house that was the 3,000 square feet and then really, really wanted a paved driveway, during the building permit process, when the town engineer and the building official do the review of the project, we would have to provide that information, or the engineer that does the submission would have to provide that information, and that homeowner would be subject to mitigating any extra stormwater on their lot.
And along those lines, does this stormwater management system for the subdivision contemplate whether or not these houses will have basements or sump pumps and French drains? Can you address that as well?
So currently, Rhode Island Building Code doesn't have any prohibitions against basements. We do have high water situations on the island. It's up to a homeowner at this point if you want to put a basement in with waterproofing. We anticipate any sump pumps would be directed towards their yard versus tied into the drainage system. However, with that said, there's extra space, if you will, in the drainage system if the town had wanted us to tie those sump pumps into the drainage system. Essentially, but when it comes down to it, though, when you're taking groundwater from a sump pump and discharging it up, it's clean water because it's groundwater. So there's no reason to run it through the stormwater system and take up space within that stormwater system with, you know, treating clean water, essentially. But like I said, the drainage system could handle that additional flow if it had to.
So based on your involvement in this project, your development of this stormwater management plan, and your understanding of the required findings that the board needs to make for preliminary plan approval, have you developed an opinion as to whether or not this project meets the requirements for preliminary plan approval?
Yes, it's my opinion that the project meets the requirements for preliminary plan approval.
Okay. The board has any questions?
Any questions for the engineer?
Um,
No, mine?
Yes. But go ahead.
BJ and then
Sorry,
Bill.
yes. Obviously, my main concerns are always about the wetlands and about the water runoff. And particularly with this Medford River, I'm glad to see and get so much information from you as to what's been done to make certain that the engineering is going to take care of the runoff. It appears to be well done. I was very concerned initially about it.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Paul. I found one of the answers I was looking for. My eyes aren't just quite big enough to read these plans. I wish they were bigger. But I did find a couple of things I was looking for. So the first item that I saw is the sidewalks to match existing. Perfect. And I see, based on the size of my eyes, where they go alongside the northern half of the grant. So I understand also that there's a Cape Cod berm there, and that's existing. Do we not, what happened to the side, to the curbing? Did we take that out of our ordinance, the curbing requirement? I don't believe we did, so would they not need a waiver for not installing curbing?
Well, the decision to add curbing would be subject to the stormwater management. If curbing is necessary to address stormwater runoff and that sort of thing, then it can be added to the plan. But we have a typical road design which does show a Cape Cod berm,
Okay.
but it's not necessary in all situations. And Lynn can describe what the situation is here.
So how is that, our regulations require curbing? Straight up, or is it subject to?
I think it's probably more on a case-by-case basis. I mean, we have a standard detail that shows the curbing, but there are situations where
Okay.
we haven't required it. For example, I can think of one off the top of my head where there was a subdivision that wanted to use green infrastructure, more environmentally sensitive
Okay.
infrastructure, where the runoff was allowed to drain into a vegetated swale. In order to allow that to happen, there was no berm or curbing. So I think it's a case-by-case.
Fair enough, Ron. So I'm generally in favor of curbing, but in this particular case, I support the Cape Cod berm for obvious reasons. But generally, I like curbing. I think it's
Well, to
necessary.
that question, Cape Cod versus a curb, our standard calls for Cape Cod berm.
Correct. That's what I was getting to. Okay. Thank you, Ron.
Yep.
The other item that I guess is subject to, I don't see on the plans, and I recall discussion at the master plan way back when, relative to the end of Mayford River Road and the stone wall that's there and access from there to the easement. Now, I know the easements are getting reconfigured, subject, and one of the conditions subject to the approval by the solicitor, but did we not address there's a stone wall there, and I think it's been broken up. Did we not agree to repair that back to a state of?
To rebuild that
To-
after we do, so what we were discussing at master plan level, and that is because there's a breach in that wall right now when they put in the sewer line connection. for the
Right.
two-lot subdivision. And you have stormwater that's running through, getting into the neighbor's yard. We agreed to replace the stone wall after we upgrade the sewer system that we need to do. In the interim, the owners have put a berm in there.
The owners of,
The owners of this project, the Camposes, have
Okay.
put a berm in there to stop the stormwater issue where it was draining through the neighbor's
okay,
property.
so can we fix the stone wall?
They will replace the stone wall
Yeah.
once the sewer line is in.
So-
Right, just to refresh your recollection, master plan approval requirement number 8, the applicant shall comply with the town's stone wall preservation ordinance regarding existing walls on the property and the restoration of the segment of stone wall at the end of Maidford River Road, which was previously removed. So
Okay,
that was a condition of master plan approval, which obviously we will do as the project progresses.
So can we carry that through?
If you want to add that on to it.
I would like to, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks. And the last item I have, Lynn, and maybe for you all, is, I read Ron's memo, I've reread it, and I'm generally okay with all of it, but I get to the point of, please help us understand the statement by the Newport Water Department letter dated June 28, 2021, indicating that the proposed water main as presented is not acceptable However, a preliminary water availability letter was issued. How does that jive? I mean, if it's not acceptable, how do they get away with issuing a letter of availability?
I think the intent or the reason behind the wording of that letter was that they haven't done a full review of the actual design of the water line yet, but just the general layout of it.
So that will normally come at the construction phase, where the final design of the connection will be reviewed and approved. As at this point in the process for the planning board's review, we're simply required to confirm through the city of Newport that water is available to serve the property, which
Right.
that letter does
So,
provide.
part of the final plan requirements are that they get a sign-off from water, that it's,
Well, they have to connect to the public water.
They
so-
can't get a building permit without
right,
that.
right, okay. So we don't need to carry anything forward? I mean, that language to me is a little,
Eventually, they're going to have to get Newport's approval to provide
right.
the connection.
Right, but it's available and they haven't right, okay, all right, I see that. I just want to make sure it gets carried forward. I'm okay with that.
Other comments for the engineer from the board?
I'm good. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike.
just looking at it, I mean, you have water there, town water and sewage, and so I don't see any, problems with the septic kind of contaminating any type of runoff or anything like that. So, and it looks like you've done a good job, with the retention ponds and, all your calculations relating to the stormwater and everything like that. And I think it looks good,
Thank you.
yeah.
Do you have another witness?
I have one other witness, if it pleases the board. Thanks. Paige. I'd like to call Paige Brunk.
Please identify yourself.
Paige Bronk.
Affiliation?
Excuse me.
Address or affiliation?
Planner, 24 Weatherly Avenue, Newport.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Bronk has testified before this board and the zoning board of Middletown before and has been recognized as a planning and zoning expert. I would request that this board recognize him as such.
So noted.
Okay, thank you. Paige, you were engaged by the applicant to review this project at the preliminary plan stage and make some determinations as to whether or not it met the sort of 5 required findings that this board needs to make for a preliminary plan approval. Is that right?
That's correct.
Could you just briefly go through the steps you undertook for that review and what your conclusions are?
Sure. I reviewed the application, looked at the subdivision as a proposal, have visited the site as well, looked at the pertinent sections of the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and also the comprehensive land use plan.
Okay, so why don't you just go through and walk through those 5 requirements and discuss with the board what your findings are?
Basically, went through each of the 5 findings, required findings. The comprehensive plan is the first one, and the most significant component from the comprehensive plan is the land use element. The existing land use map within the plan documents the property as undeveloped and unprotected. Also, the existing land uses surrounding the property are primarily low-density, single-family residential as well. The future land use map illustrates that the proposed future land use is to be actually residential, low-density residential. And there's a map within the comprehensive plan that deals with potential zoning map changes. That would be map L5. In the event that there are inconsistencies between the existing zoning ordinance and the proposed future land use, that map would identify those parcels. This property is not identified on that map, so there is no desire by the plan to make any zoning amendments on this particular property. In terms of the goals for the land use element, the key goal, goal L1, to achieve a balanced and harmonious development pattern in Middletown that promotes economic growth and reinvestment while preserving neighborhood integrity, environmental and aesthetic quality, and overall livability. There are subsequent policies that support that overall goal, promoting a land use and development framework based upon smart growth principles. There are policies that focus on protecting open space. However, this parcel is not identified in the comp plan as one of those open space properties. And also there is language within the land use element dealing with natural resources. However, this property is not identified as having sensitive natural resource lands. And there is reference to natural resources and conservation values. The proposed plan offers a buffer from the wetlands as was described by Lynn. The housing element within the document primarily deals with affordable housing. However, there is a reference within one of the goals, goal number 4, that states that there should be an emphasis to reduce housing costs while promoting more sustainable development. It references developing vacant and underutilized parcels within existing developed areas served by public water and sewer. This clearly is a property that would fit that term. Lastly, the last element is the natural and ecological resources section. Primary goal, ensure that new development takes place in an ecologically sound manner. In this case, this project protects the wetland with buffers. It connects to public water and sewer, is situated upslope from the lower elevation, and addresses stormwater best practices. In conclusion, in my opinion, the project is in compliance, given that the area is classified as undeveloped. It's designated for future residential land use, served by public water and sewer, surrounded by residential development, not identified by the town for any needed zoning amendments. It's not a farm. It's not classified as open space. In my opinion, it is consistent with the comp plan.
So, and just briefly, the remaining elements that this board needs to consider in their decision, you reviewed this to make a determination as to whether or not the project is compliant with the zoning ordinance of the town, is that right?
Yes.
And what's your determination on that?
I found it to be in compliance with the standards and provisions of the Middletown zoning ordinance. As was stated earlier, it's an R40 zone, primarily used or intended to be for single-family, low-density residential development. Each of the proposed lots are in compliance at 40,000 square feet. The frontage requirements are also in compliance, and it also complies with many of the zoning purposes. To read a couple of them: promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the town, provide for a range of uses appropriate to the character of the town and reflecting current and future needs. Lastly, I would say that given that the TRC has reviewed the plan and made a general positive finding with certain recommendations, and the project will comply with that, it's in general concurrence with the zoning ordinance.
Now, based on the testimony of the engineer regarding the stormwater management, and knowing that this project calls for municipal sewer and water, is there any indication that this would have a negative environmental impact?
No.
Subdivision as proposed, it's not going to result in the creation of individual lots with any type of physical constraints. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And these lots will all have adequate access to a public street, correct?
That's correct. Serenity Drive.
So again, just in reviewing the 5 elements that need to be satisfied, is it your opinion that this subdivision plan meets all those requirements?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Questions from the board? Do you have any other witnesses?
I do not,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Are there any objectors represented by an attorney? Mr. Martland.
Yes, Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Martland, here on behalf of the Aquidneck Land Trust. And you asked if there were any objectors, and what I'd like to indicate is that I don't think the land trust is actually objecting to the overall subdivision. However, the land trust has significant concerns relative to the subdivision and is relying, on the town, and the town engineer and the planner and the independent reviewer in connection with those concerns. And the concerns are relative to the stormwater runoff. The land trust owns the property directly to the east. The topography of this property goes downhill from Serenity Drive right to my client's property and then down to the Maidford River. So the concerns of the land trust are relative to the wetlands complex, the runoff it will be receiving, and ultimately to the public drinking water. I've got a letter, I don't know if Ron shared it with the board. I'd like to just submit. If I may approach?
The applicant get it, Dave? The applicant get it?
Yes, the applicant received it.
So they're aware of,
They're aware that they've addressed some of it in their testimony.
Thank you.
So one of the issues I raised in the letter dealt with the stability of the stormwater pond berm. There was a condition from the TRC relative to that. And also, there was a condition regarding a redesign of the detention basin. Now, I understand from the testimony this evening, the calculations for that berm have been done but not submitted, and that there's been a redesign of the detention basin. Now, I will tell you, I called the planning department today and asked if there had been a redesign of that detention basin, and I was told by Rita that she was not aware of any redesign of the detention basin. So I don't believe that's been reviewed by the planning department or Crossman Engineering. So we're relying on the town to review these items, and I'm sure, and I know the board relies on staff and the engineer. And so we want to make sure that before there's any approval granted, the stability of the berm is accounted for, and the detention basin is appropriately constructed. So I think those are items that should be resolved prior to an approval, because one of the findings that this board has to make is that there won't be any environmental, significant negative environmental impact. And if those items cannot be resolved, how can you make that conclusion? I've also recommended, or I've suggested certain conditions be placed on the approval. And this harkens back to some of the conditions that were placed on the Stonebridge subdivision that Mark Brennan did. And I thought they were thoughtful conditions that the staff and the board had come up with. One, that there be some sort of quarterly testing of the outfall of the stormwater system, so that we know if there are any contaminants going to the wetland and ultimately to the public drinking water source. And I've proposed language that is similar to what you would find in the condition previously imposed by the board on the Brennan subdivision. Additionally, the design of the stormwater management system, as Ms. Small had testified to, is reliant on an assumed impervious area footprint of 3,000 square feet per lot. Now, that might be an appropriate number. It might not be an appropriate number, but that's what was utilized. And that 3,000 square feet isn't just building footprint, although it's shown on the plan as building footprint. It's impervious footprint. And so I believe, I heard Ms. Small testify that a pool wouldn't count towards that, but there's no groundwater recharge going on there. So this deals with impervious area, patios, anything of that nature. Now, the question also comes down to the driveway. So what's before the board, the applicant is proposing that there'll be crushed stone driveways, which is fine. But the board needs to make sure that that's in fact what is done and it doesn't become impervious. Now, Ms. Small testified that, well, at the building permit stage, all that gets worked out. That's partially true. I'm not aware of any building permit requirement for a driveway. So you could come in, put in a crushed stone driveway, and have your house, and a year later, they come in and pave it. You don't have to go get another building permit in order to do that. So what I'm proposing is that there be a check on that, so that there's a condition that it'll be a crushed stone driveway, and annually there'll be an inspection to make sure that it stays in compliance. Also, I think the 3,000 square foot impervious area needs to be imposed as a condition. It wasn't listed in the conditions of approval as it has been in other subdivisions. So that should be a condition that I think is clear, that it's tied in to the decision and the other legal documents. And finally, I think the board should also look at a condition of not allowing the use of sub pumps and French drains, which would add to the stormwater management system. Now, I don't believe that the stormwater calculations account for sub pumps and French drains. I don't think that flow is within those stormwater calculations. Now, I understand that Ms. Small testified this evening that the pond is large enough to handle it, but I don't believe that that's in the calculations. I would defer to Ms. Small to answer that question, but I certainly, my understanding of watching and listening to the TRC was that was not in the calculations. So I would suggest that as a condition, as it was in the Stonebridge application. I've submitted that language, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Martland?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions. I noticed the date on this particular letter is today,
That's correct.
which is outside our normal acceptance period. Number two, when were these concerns actually recognized to be put forth, because apparently these were not raised with the TRC in their last meeting, am I correct?
That's correct. And, you know, and you raise a good point. So at the outset of this, I contacted Ron and I asked Ron, am I allowed to participate in the TRC process? And as is the practice, it's not a public hearing, so they don't take participation from abutting property owners. So it's not something that gets raised in that process. Ron indicated to me that I should bring those concerns to the board.
Well, if that's the case, I think that might have been presented maybe perhaps by a letter to the TRC, but we're in a tough spot here because I think you've raised concerns which nobody up here is qualified to really evaluate, because obviously we didn't go to engineering school. So I would think we either have to do one of two things. We have to perhaps continue this and have these concerns go back to the TRC for their evaluation, or at least the town engineer needs to look at this to give us an opinion on your concerns, and if they are valid, they would have to be added to the list of conditions that are already sitting here from the TRC. So I'm a little concerned. These things sound reasonable to me, but that's where I'm coming from. And I do go to the TRC meetings, and I do notice some give and take there, normally between the applicant and some of the town staff. So, but we're kind of late in the game getting this, so I'm not sure exactly what to do, but I've given you some ideas.
Paul,
Yeah,
can I just
Bill?
ask, did you attend the TRC meeting
I've attended the TRC meetings,
for this
but
applicant?
for the last TRC meeting, I had injured my back. I
Okay,
did
so-
watch the TRC meeting.
So, but typically, you attend representing abutters or interested parties, and if inclined, the TRC certainly allows you to participate.
No. The policy of the TRC is to not accept public input. It's not a public hearing, so there's no public testimony.
I understand that, but if the TRC, if a member of the TRC had a question, and they were in a position to answer it, would they not defer to, would they not ask somebody who's sitting there saying, hey, I mean, if the issue came up, if an issue comes up, and there is a interested party there that can simply answer that question and move things along, would they ask? Would they?
They might.
They might. So, I mean, that's my point, is that might have come up if you were there. I understand you have issues, but that's just my observation. I've been at TRCs as well. I think it's, you can't cry wolf here and then expect that, you're not going to get your answer, and you want to bring this up now. I get it, but.
Well, Bill, just to be clear, I specifically asked the planner whether I could participate,
Understood. Understood.
and I was told, bring the concerns to the board,
That's
which
fair.
is the process.
Yeah.
And look, typically I'm representing applicants, and I know like, if another interested party shows up to the TRC, they don't participate. It's not a public hearing.
Sure. I get it.
and
Well, in the
and maybe that
interest,
needs to be fixed.
in the interest of moving this along, Art raises a good question. Let me ask the applicant, would you be willing to continue this till next month so that we could have these topics reviewed?
So the applicant is agreeable to continue the public hearing until next month and work with the planning department. My only concern is that we don't want to get caught in a cycle of scheduling for TRC, and then we get bumped again another month and
Well,
get
I
delayed.
suggest you work with the planning department and their consultant to resolve these issues.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, these items, for example, the calculations with regard to berm stability could be provided to Crossman
Yeah.
to be checked.
Yeah.
The revisions to the retention area could also be checked.
Yeah.
They can also address the issue of whether, of the sump pumps, because I don't know if the board wants to get into, is now essentially banning sump pumps. I think the question here is whether or not the sump pumps are draining into the stormwater system as opposed to something
More
else. So,
thing.
but that's something that I think we want to get some,
So again,
perhaps some advice from Crossman.
Crossman, yeah.
applicant would be happy to work with staff, third-party reviewer, and come back, and if Lynn needs to give some additional testimony next month, we can do that.
That's great. So,
I'll make,
hold on a
Some more
second.
comment?
We will leave the public hearing open, but I just want to know if anyone from the public would like to speak this evening.
Hetty Bennett, 89 Paradise Avenue. I'm on a butter, and I'm just concerned about the drainage, as we just went through. Also, there's stone walls that run on the perimeter of the property, and I know you addressed that. There's a stone wall that runs on the northern boundary. Would those also be preserved?
What does the ordinance require, Ron?
The town ordinance only applies to stone walls abutting public ways, so I'm not sure which wall Hetty's referring to.
All along the northern boundary, there's a stone wall.
I believe that wall is proposed to remain. The applicant maybe can answer the question. I don't see anything on the plans where that wall is proposed to be removed.
It's not in real great shape, but there is a wall that runs.
It's not abutting a public right, though, I don't believe.
No, it
Public right
abuts
of way.
our
Right.
property.
It's your, I don't know if we can compel them to do so. I don't think that's in our,
I suggest you talk to the applicant and see if they would cooperate with you.
As long as they're not destroyed. You know,
Talk
it
to
would
the
take a significant amount of work to probably redo them, but as long as they're not totally destroyed, I mean, it'd be nice to preserve the integrity of them.
Do you have any comment?
We'd be happy to discuss the stone wall.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other person from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Okay,
I have another comment, Paul.
okay. Bill?
Just capital, what Pete said about the sump pumps, again, some of the proposed conditions, I'm not inclined to support unless our town engineers do relative prohibiting basements, unless they have a sump pump, French drains. But more importantly, I think the suggestion that the town building official and engineer inspect each year or receive each year an inspection at the cost of the property owner, to me, that seems to be a little too onerous for property owners. I don't believe I would support a condition along those lines, so I'm hoping that you two can work it out and make it work.
I would like to hear what the town's consulting engineer has to say on that.
Yep. Defer to him.
At this point, may I have a motion to continue this item to the January 12th meeting? We'll have more discussion. May I have that motion, please?
I'll make a motion to continue this until the next meeting in January with the provision that the issues raised by Mr. Martland are examined by the town engineer, and whatever comes from that discussion might add to some additional conditions.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion. Mike?
I had a question mostly for Ron. You know, like, one of the things that Dave brought up was the, you know, somebody could, you know, if they had a stone driveway, they decided to put in a paved driveway, they could just do that. Wouldn't they need a permit for that?
There's no
there's
town
no
permit for
permit.
that.
Okay.
But if somebody did it and it was in violation and found to be in violation, they'd have to rip it out, regardless if it's 300 yards long or 30 feet long. It's on them.
They'd have to rip it out, or they'd have to put in additional
Measures.
systems or BMPs in order to accommodate.
Happens all the time. I mean, it's hard to police that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is
Thank
continued
you.
with the public hearing remaining open. Next item on the agenda is item 4D, public hearing, application of Newport National Real Estate, LLC, for development plan review, for development of a 9-hole golf course and associated clubhouse, and request for waivers from certain commercial development design standards of Section 521 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Property fronts on Wyatt Road and Mitchell's Lane. Tax Assessors Plat 124, Lot 29. Mr. Silva.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Robert M. Silva with the firm of Silva, Thomas, Motlin, and Offenberg, 1100 Aquidneck Avenue, Middletown, Rhode Island. I am here representing the applicant in this matter, Newport National Real Estate LLC, which is the title owner, presenting the proposal for an additional 9-hole golf course contiguous with and adjacent to the existing 18-hole golf course known as the Newport National. The 18-hole golf course is on the east side of Mitchell's Lane. The area that is now being considered as an addition with 9 holes being a part of it is on the west side of Mitchell's Lane. I believe that the planning board took advantage of a site visit and has made an announcement that it understands where the undeveloped parcel is and where it will be developed. So the 18-hole course on the east side will remain the same. Presently, that's served by a rather inadequate, modest facility, which is a double-wide trailer, and that is what is used by the existing facility to have a pro shop, to have a small area for sandwiches and drinks, and a deck to accommodate golfers and guests after they play a round of golf or are in attendance at any function. The plan that is being proposed by Mr. John Pereira, who's the principal behind the proposal, is to add another 9 holes to the west side of Mitchell's Lane, and in addition to construct a complete, adequate clubhouse, which would include a function hall and a restaurant to serve the membership of the club. The process of this development has been rather long and somewhat, if Mr. Pereira would describe it as torturous. The original plans for the full 18 holes on the side of the west side of Mitchell's was designed and planned, but never built, never became before the planning board or any other committee in Middletown, and eventually ownership changed and Mr. Pereira purchased the undeveloped property. He then decided to redesign that side so it would only be 9 holes, but have a clubhouse and also a golf academy, which is a fancy way of describing a practice area or a driving range, and supplemental auxiliary uses supporting a 9-hole golf course and the 18-hole course on the east side of Mitchell's Lane. Mr. Pereira engaged the services of Dupree Engineering, Chris Duhamel and Kevin Demers are both here, and they've been a part of this process for years. It included the need to work with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management because a part of the course contained a large catchment area built so that it could contain sufficient amounts of water to supply the course. And DEM was required to review all those plans and, in fact, ultimately approved the proposed design of the retention area. It's a pond for irrigation. It's not a detention or retention area as we know those are being described in processes in Middletown. This is a huge catchment area so that the water will be used to irrigate the course itself. The DEM approval was obtained originally many years ago, and it encountered difficulties in getting involved and permitted while the permit originally lasted. So we had to go back to DEM with some revisions and whatnot, and Chris Stuhamel worked with the DEM representatives, and we now have a final approval which is in place and will be used by the project for the development of that 9-hole course. The other witnesses that I will present tonight include, besides Chris Duhamel and Kevin Demers, Pamela Rogers, who's a landscape architect, and she prepared the landscape plans that have been reviewed by the TRC, and also Nathan Godfrey, a real estate expert, who will address the compatibility of this project under the zoning laws, zoning ordinances, and the planning board rules and regulations, and as well as the necessary findings of compatibility with the comprehensive plan. So Mr. Godfrey will be here to present as well. And Mr. Bannon, Paul Bannon from Beta Engineering, prepared an analysis from a traffic perspective, and based on a number of the conditions that are rather unique to this course and imposed by the town council many years ago when the zoning was requested to be changed to open space, in which category a golf course would be permitted. Mr. Bannon looked at those conditions as imposed as a part of the zoning change, which was granted. The area is now open space designated. The conditions went beyond the usual concerns of the town council in making a zoning change, and some of those conditions dealt with the concerns by the council as to traffic and the impact that that traffic would have in the general neighborhood area. Mr. Bannon prepared an analysis, rather thorough, and we have presented that in the past, and it's been there for quite some time. And it's also been reviewed by the Technical Review Committee and the town's consultant engineer, Mr. Cabral from Crossman Engineering. And although Mr. Bannon was not required to testify before the Technical Review Committee, at the last hearing that we had, and I believe it was Wednesday, December the 1st, Mr. Cabral, when asked by me as to his concerns, if any, with respect to the traffic analysis prepared by Mr. Bannon, indicated that he had reviewed it and he had no concerns, that he was comfortable that Mr. Bannon had addressed the issues articulated in the original zoning amendment to this property. I suggested, or it was asked of me, whether or not I would like a letter to that effect from Mr. Cabral to be sent so the planning board could have that attitude and conclusion that he reached as to the traffic issues, and he said he would do it. I'm not too sure that he's managed to get it to the board, but I would represent that from a traffic perspective, I think the TRC consulting engineer from Crossman Engineering Company found no issue with the impacts that would result to the area, if any, and to the suggestions made by the town council as to directional signs and things of that nature with respect to the issue of traffic. So I have Mr. Bannon here tonight, and I would make him available to answer questions that the planning board might have on traffic, but I don't necessarily will present him to reiterate the report in detail unless the board or any member of the board wishes him to do so. I also have an economic planner, Joseph Lombardo. He has appeared before many councils, committees, and groups as a certified planner, and he has prepared a report which I have not submitted yet, but will do so when Mr. Lombardo testifies. And that's to the issue of, is there a beneficial economic impact to the town of Middletown from the planned development that's being proposed, the 9 holes and a clubhouse to support it, and the ancillary use of that clubhouse as a part of the overall golfing experience. Mr. Lombardo's here tonight, and he will testify, and I will then present and make available to the board the physical report that he's prepared. Finally, with respect to the design of the clubhouse, we have a certified architect, Spencer McComb, who has worked with Mr. Pereira over the years to design the clubhouse that is going to be a part of this development. And on that issue, there have been some changes made over the past several months to the clubhouse to accommodate the need to avoid variance relief that was originally required. The clubhouse originally had a footprint of close to 20,000 square feet, and the zoning ordinance would require a variance because the maximum footprint in an open space district such as this is 10,000 square feet. So we went back to the drawing boards, and Spencer redesigned the clubhouse, and I think it's less than 10,000, something like 9,000 and change, so we don't need a variance in that regard. But as a result of compressing the footprint to accommodate the need for a viable clubhouse, the development resulted in a design of 2 stories plus gable roofs to hide the HVAC equipment, and the zoning ordinance is quite clear that in a open space district, height requirement is only 30 feet. You can't go above that, which is kind of unusual because at an adjacent residential 10 property, you can build a house 35 feet, but in the open space, that's what the ordinance says. So by way of explanation, there is a pending matter before the zoning board requesting a height variance only in that regard, but not a footprint variant whatsoever. And the design of the clubhouse is rather unique. It's worthy of the effort that has been and the expense that will be incurred by Mr. Pereira in doing this as a first-class golf course with another 9 holes associated with it. So Mr. Spencer McComb will be testifying as well. So I did submit some documentation just recently, within the last several days, that resulted from some of the discussion at the TRC meeting. And the TRC meeting only took place on December the 1st, and I know that those submissions would probably not meet the planning board's requirement of getting documentation early enough so that it has an opportunity as a membership to review things for the public hearing. So I'm not at all concerned about the type of approach to this hearing, which would defer full consideration until another date. But because we're here, I would like to at least present as much testimony and evidence as I can and address any questions up to this point that the board membership might have. So with that, and I apologize for the long opening statement, I would call upon Kevin Demers and Chris Duhamel as qualified engineers from Dupree to ask
Hold on one
to be
minute.
qualified.
I don't think I opened it.
We don't need to, it's, this
Yeah.
is development plan.
Mr.
review.
Silva, you mentioned that
Yeah, we do.
you might consider delaying to a later date. We have a huge agenda this evening, and this is a very large topic. Would you be agreeable to setting up a special meeting just for this application?
I would not look at that as skew, but could I consult
Sure,
with
of
Mr.
course.
Pereira,
Of course.
who is the developer of
We could schedule it as, you know, Ron does the poll, and we could schedule it
So
as
it wouldn't
soon
go
as
over
possible.
to the 12th of January.
Right,
It would be a special meeting just for us.
that's right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to...
Mr. Pereira is saying yes.
Excuse me. I would like to defer this discussion to a special meeting, primarily because when I read the conditions and I see the word prior to, and there's some significant things here related to engineering support from our supporting engineer. And I think it would be the right thing to do, to have a meeting to discuss this, but with our engineer there to talk about some of the major league issues. And we could do that all at some other time, but I don't think we're going to get exactly what we need. And I think Mr. Cabral needs to be part of this discussion, even listening to what your witnesses have to say.
Well, I anticipated that Steve would be here tonight.
Well, he's not, and I know
Yeah.
that we got another, having gone to the TRC, I thought there was kind of an animated discussion about Wyatt Road and water,
Yep.
which is important. So I think we need to have a complete team on both sides to bring their points forward, and then we can consider it.
Well, whatever makes the board comfortable. As I said, this project has been in the queue for several years, and one thing I know about Mr. Pereira, when he does something, he does it the right way, and he doesn't want to do it any other way.
Let me check
So
with,
he's more than happy to accommodate whatever protocol the planning board might have.
let me check with the planner. Ron, if we continue this, we need a date to continue it to, don't we? So,
Yes. So that's a problem, because I don't know when you're available, and I don't know when this room is available.
and if we just continue it to the January 12th, then we have to wait till then before we could
Right,
assign a special meeting date.
right.
You can vet that date and hopefully confirm that date in advance, and then, but whatever special meeting that you have would have to be after the 12th. In other words, you could confirm that it's the 13th or the 15th or whatever date, everyone's available, but we
So
have to
it looks
continue
like it
to
would have to be after the 12th in order to meet all the requirements.
So if I understand what the solicitor is suggesting is that we put it over to the 12th for control purposes?
Yeah, and then hopefully determine a date in the interim.
That'll give Ron an opportunity to
Exactly.
speak to everyone about
Yeah, exactly.
available date.
Well, perhaps another way around that is if we do it at a regular meeting and perhaps come in at 5 o'clock, adjust our time a little bit. I mean, that's not unusual, it's been done
Are
before.
you speaking for the board?
You know? Yeah, because it's, it's, honestly,
We can deal with how we handle it between now and then.
It's a good
But now we should
We
just
appreciate that.
continue it to the 12th.
Yeah.
Okay, is that okay with you? And then,
I'm sorry, I didn't get that, Mr. Chairman.
for now, we should continue this to the meeting of January 12th. And then the board, working with Ron, will arrive at a date to address this project, whether it's earlier in the evening of the 12th or some other date. We'll get it done as quickly as we can.
Well, I think as a matter of public notice, if you're going to
Yeah.
meet earlier than 6 o'clock, that has to be decided tonight. So
Right.
the public will hear that.
Let's just continue it to the 12th and find a date for a special meeting.
Okay.
For
Okay.
control, like you said.
May I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the January 12th meeting with the condition that we will find a date for a special meeting as soon after that as
This will be
possible.
for control purposes,
For
right?
control
Yeah.
purposes.
But just one question as a result of Mr. Weber's comments that the board might want to have an opportunity to meet with Steve Cabral. Is that going to happen beforehand?
Well,
would
we
be-
don't meet with him on specific subjects, but I think he should be here for anything we do on the subject whenever it comes up again.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
no-
And
Not a problem.
and he can review documents and make recommendations to the board, so
Okay.
we may not have to meet.
Well, if I might take advantage of at least this hearing to submit some documents that will be the subject of discussion.
I would submit those to Ron, and Ron can certainly
Yeah.
provide them to Steve,
Okay.
rather than,
Yeah,
It will be Mr. Lombardo's report, the report from Mr. Godfrey, and a letter from the architect of the course in connection with issues relating to fencing. Yeah, and I'm wondering whether the stormwater management report is required because we're prepared to submit that. Okay?
I would submit all of that to the planning
Send
department.
it to the planner. Okay.
And they can
So
distribute
just
it
to be-
as needed.
Just to be clear, though, you're asking to have Steve Cabral here, our consulting engineer. Is that at the applicant's cost, or is that, do we have to be?
Currently, Steve Cabral is the acting town engineer, so that would be at our
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So we're talking,
He's on the payroll now, so he's
We'll
our guy.
see when Warren
Yeah.
comes back.
Okay.
so that's at our cost, so why,
It depends on what the timing of it is.
Yep.
Warren may be back.
well, if
but-
he's asking for him to be here, and you're asking, right? Did you ask?
Yeah.
So if he pays for it, would that be acceptable?
Well, under the rules, if he's not, otherwise the acting town engineer would be the applicant's cost anyway, under that circumstance.
Okay, that's what I was.
So it typically would be the applicant's cost, it's just in the current circumstances, if
Yeah.
it's the acting town engineer, it isn't.
That's why I want to be
That
clear
may-
on that.
Obviously, if,
Falls.
so we have a motion to continue this to the January 12th meeting for control purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a 5-minute break, and could I see you for a minute, please?
Surely.
Hey, Paul. Paul, might you do me a favor?
Please. Next item on the agenda is item 4E, a public informational meeting. Application by Aquidneck Commerce Center LLC for master plan approval of a major land development project for a proposed mixed-use development including 12 new residential units and approximately 15,000 square feet of office space contained in one new and two existing buildings pursuant to Article 27A of the Middletown zoning ordinance, and including requests for waivers from certain design standards of Section 521 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, and requests for variances from the Middletown zoning ordinance Sections 27A07E1, 27A07E2, and 27A07E3 to allow a building in the mixed-use development to be approximately 62 feet from an abutting residential dwelling where 100 feet is required, to allow the area within the required landscape buffer to include a driveway, and to allow a building height of 39.5 feet where the height limit is 35 feet. Property is located at 809, 811, and 819 Aquidneck Avenue. Assessors Plat 114, lots 129 and 504.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Patrick Hayes, 43 Memorial Boulevard in Newport on behalf of the applicant. This project is proposing to merge two lots on Aquidneck Avenue at 809 and 811 with lot 819 to raise the existing dilapidated house on lot at 819 Aquidneck Avenue and do a mixed-use development as was described in your introduction. The house lot that is there now would be replaced with a 12-unit, two-bedroom apartment building, and the project is permitted as a matter of right by the provisions of Article 27A, but we do, as you noted, we require 3 variances, and I would like to have Christopher Bisho, who's the principal of Aquidneck Commerce Center, speak to those variances at the outset, if I may.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Bisho, 96 Diane Ave, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. We're here seeking 3 variances, and when developing the site plan, we were trying to be conscious of all the surrounding neighbors and area. We are asking for a variance on the road, the 20-foot vegetation buffer, and that's because the property currently has 2 curb cuts, and we are eliminating one of the curb cuts to the south and utilizing the one to the northern part of the property.
Could you show it on the diagram?
Sure can.
Yeah. Take the hand mic with you, please.
So, is it working?
Yes,
It is? Okay, thank you.
I think so.
Should I sing or no? So developing the site, we have a lot of issues with Aquidneck Ave, so we've decided to, we felt that eliminating the southernmost access point would be beneficial and have a one-way northern access point. In doing so, the road does kind of encroach on the 20-foot buffer, and it does leave 5 feet the way it's designed today.
So you have a 5-foot buffer.
So we have a 5-foot vegetated buffer where we'll plant some giant arborvitaes, which will come through the landscape plan that we'll present during TRC. In addition, we've sent an email to the abutter saying, we are more than willing to put a 6-foot wooden fence along there in addition to the vegetation buffer. This road, the building is angled this way for a very specific reason. And that's because we have a large grove of pine trees right here and a stone wall going this way. So we've kind of used the natural contours of the lot to go ahead and achieve the site plan. That does put us approximately 63 feet from the nearest residential/business unit. It is a residential use. So we are mindful of that. And That's the second variance. The third variance of the height is just, the building is never more than 35 feet above the topsoil. The only reason why it does rise to 39 feet is because of the slope of the land and the way the calculation's done. It's 39 feet.
Yeah.
But the building itself is never more than 35 feet above the ground itself. So it's just a result of the slope and not a result of us designing the building higher than 35 feet. So when we looked at the alternatives, we can move the building this way and therefore be 100 feet away from the residential unit, slide the road this way. What will happen is we will lose the stone wall. It does not fade at the public right of way. We'll have to replace it somewhere. We'll find a place for it. We lose all the tree lines, and we would lose this second access. Because right now, there's a loop in the property, and therefore, the fire department felt that was a good solution for the property to have that loop so they could get up this way and down this way. By widening this road, it would be in and out, but we would lose the kind of the loop transportation system that we have in there. If we do move the building this way, we will be 100 feet away, we'll be closer to this building, and we can move the road that way, so that is feasible. The height variance is the one thing that is impossible to really construct without elongating the building and kind of losing its dimensions because of the slope.
Excavated and make it.
And that's where we are on the site. So that's the three variances.
It seems to me if you move the building to achieve the 100-foot separation, you could still establish that circular flow that TRC likes.
Well, I don't know, and I don't believe we will. We won't be there. If we even come this way a little bit more, I don't think we get the 100 feet, Chairman. I think we actually have to tilt the building all the way so it's almost perpendicular this way in order to achieve the 100 feet. We might get 80 feet, we might get 79, we might get 90, but we would still need a variance. We can get 100 if we just move it this way, and then being compliant, without a variance for that. And then we have to slide the road over because we need to put it this way so we can get the road far enough behind, but yet still have, a walkway in, and we're gonna need to get people into the building. So we really would have to slide it over and lose this circular path.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
Chris, as long as you want to speak to the issue of the flat roof on the building.
Sure. I know, Chairman, how you feel about flat roofs. We were going for a design that kind of worked more as a campus. A campus, and do we have a picture on of the building?
It's ugly. Ugly.
So most importantly, even though if you bear with us and allow the flat roof situation, there will be no mechanicals on the flat roof. And the flat roof kind of fits with this, and so it's kind of the way the buildings are, kind of positioned and the way the landscaping works. And we were looking for more of a contemporary coastal feel, trying to, maybe move in a direction that's more, fits the commercial atmosphere of Aquidneck Ave, really, in trying to present that campus. So that it's a design. It's really it's a personal opinion kind of selection. I do understand where you're coming from. We just felt it really looks nice laid out. That's personal preference, I guess.
Are you going to change the colors of the siding on that commercial building on the right?
This has already been changed. I don't know if you've driven by. We've changed these to a dovetail gray. So this is all, the building looks the white's gone and now it's all been changed. The siding's all been put on the building if you drive by. I mean, it looks really nice. I mean, you don't have the most recent drawings up here, Ron, but we have new drawings of the updated siding and everything.
The same color as the siding on the apartment building?
Yes, exactly. So it all looks the same. It's actually not this red. It's a little more, it's already been done, a matter of fact. If you drive by. So this has all been complete, and then all this would match together.
Other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Bill?
Question, yeah, thanks. Ron, as I read your memo, he's talked about zoning relief. Ultimately, the relief for the 62 feet, for the 100 feet requirement where 62 is, where 100 is required, 62, ultimately, that's a zoning board no, that's us.
Yeah.
Based,
This is coming in under the mixed-use mixed-use ordinance.
Okay.
And that ordinance provides for the planning board to make determinations on
Okay.
zoning
So
relief.
you'd be applying the same standards at the zoning board.
so the zoning board isn't going to see that provision, they're going to see the height.
No,
Oh, we're seeing it, oh,
You're seeing everything.
we're
And
seeing it all?
Seeing everything.
Okay.
And on that note, I just want to note that I did not add the building height. Remember, at the
That's what
last
confused me.
meeting,
Okay.
there was that issue of them not having, had requested the building height variance, so we had to re-advertise, but I neglected to add that to the memo. So
Okay,
there's
that's
actually,
right. Okay, I remember
there's
now.
actually 3 issues, zoning variance issues.
Okay, so I support the height generally, but I got to say, I look at, I mean, I don't want to lose this, I don't want to lose the stone wall. I like the stone wall, and I think you've agreed to repair it and keep it whole. But did the fire department see that? I want to make sure the fire department has access to because that stone wall is going to be close, and I don't know.
The stone wall's, if we have to, with the 62 feet, it works. If we have to go to the 100 feet, we have to
Right.
put the stone wall down.
Understood. So if we support, if I want,
Go back to the site plan.
if I want to support keep the stone wall and give you the 62 feet, my question is has the fire department, are they aware that there's going to be a stone wall potentially hindering their access there?
Oh, no, the stone wall's already here. It's just here. So that doesn't impede their
I-
access at all.
I understand that, but along the back side of that property is if they needed to get a vehicle in there,
Oh, there's no stone wall back here.
no, I know that. I'm talking about behind the building on the south side.
Oh,
Where the-
yes, right here. Yes, they're aware of it.
That's
Yep.
close.
Yep.
That's close to the structure.
Yes,
And typically, if the fire department needs to get access there,
yep.
that stone wall potentially could hinder access for fire. So I just want to be clear.
We've reviewed this site plan during roads and utilities, and the fire department was there.
Okay.
And their one comment was they've asked us to just remove a space over here so
All right.
they got to turn.
Okay, okay, okay.
What is the building that is 62 feet from your building?
This building right here.
Yeah, but what is that building?
That is a single-family home.
It's a single-family home.
It's a single-family home with a business too.
Yes.
It's a landscaping business.
Okay, speak into the microphone, please.
There's a single-family home there that is also incorporates a landscaping business at the site. It's not purely single-family.
Other comments or questions?
So,
About the waiver.
Mike and then Art.
So on the north end there, where you have that, what is it, 6-foot buffer, 5?
We have the way the road's laid out is 5 feet, and then there'll be a landscape and a wooden fence that goes all the way up.
So I'm looking at these architectural drawings. It looks like maybe a tall hedge or some arborvitae's or something.
The arborvitae's,
Yeah.
correct, giant arborvitae's.
Okay,
Yeah, they'll grow somewhere around 15 to 20 feet high.
okay,
Pretty fast growing.
okay.
So I just want to
Art?
be sure to go through the checklist again for zoning. We have 3 things now, and we're adding the height variance. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 3. Thank you. Well, I think, I mean, if you're going uphill, what are you going to do?
I know.
You know?
I think we're at like 161 and it goes all the way down to 140. That's really it. But the building itself never goes above 35 feet. It's clearly just a slope.
BJ, go ahead.
Do we need to go through these potential waiver requests
You can go through them one by one if you want.
one by one? All right.
But before you do that, I have another question. Your perspective drawings show windows on the ends of the buildings, but your plan drawings do not show the windows on the ends. What is your...
Oh, well, we haven't gone that far yet until we have master plan approval. Then we'll go into full design and make sure that we meet all the requirements.
Okay.
20%, no more than the maximum.
Also, will there be rooftop equipment on the new building?
No.
But you do have some on the old building.
On the office building, but I looked and I guess they did build little parapets around it.
So is it adequately screened?
It looks that way to me. I mean, no, seriously, it does. I mean, when I'm up there, it looks like they did add something.
Mr. Costa needs to check it out. The zoning officer could take that.
Okay, all right. So at this point, I think, before we start those deliberations, this is a public informational hearing, so is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this project?
Did you want to address the waivers?
We will go, when we make the motion, we'll go through all of the waivers one by one. At this point, I'd like to get some feedback from the public, and someone over there would like to speak.
Sandy Patello, 833 Quinnick Ave. We're a budding building.
Right.
Angelo Patello, 833 Quinnick Ave.
Make sure you're speaking into the microphone, please.
So, been talking to Chris, so one of the issues we have is, I'm calling it a road instead of a driveway, coming too close to the property. We're worried about, like, you know, even though we run our business out of our house, we take businesses away, we don't have business come to the house. So on that side of our property, we have a pool. Our grandkids play back there, our kids play back there.
Could you take the hand mic and show us on the drawing what where you're talking about, please?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So the pool is approximately, you know, could be 10, 15 feet away from the property line. We do have grandkids that play back there, as I said, so my issue is, you know, even though it's a one-way, you'll have, whether it's trucks, UPS, FedEx, and all them, in and out. They don't drive like, you know, 5, 10 miles an hour when they're in this zone. So I'm more or less worried about cars that are leaving the property or coming in, whichever this is supposed to go, coming in, you know, sliding into our property on a snowy day or something like that. You know what I mean? If somebody's not paying attention, it's only a 5-foot buffer. You know, a 20-foot driveway in the buffer doesn't make sense to me. And I think Chris is trying to, you know, in some way alleviate, make a greater distance, which is, hey, I'll be all for it. But we do have concerns because we do use that side of our property for, you know, our own use.
Your concern is that some of those vehicles might encroach on your property?
Well, it's not the encroaching, it's if they're coming around, I don't know which way this, I guess it's coming up, but, you know, it's always something on Quinnick Ave. You know, I brought it up once before, but vehicles run off the road, just pulling up a parking lot from across the street. So yes, it makes me very nervous. This is 5 feet from my property, you know? It's not 50 feet from my property. And it's a big concern. You know, I think Chris, like I said, was trying to give it some other way of making it work. And, you know, if you can make it work, great. You know, the distance, you know, you can push that road over a little bit, you know, great. But this is just, to me, it's just too close. And then is that 5-foot buffer at some point, maybe it doesn't work on, you know, works on the plan. Does it become smaller? Does it become a 2-foot? You know, it's supposed to be 20 feet, but you got a road in it. That's not really a buffer as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, ultimately, I think he was trying to give some other way of making this work, which, you know, we get that, and I understand it. You know, I just don't want the road so close. You know, I'm calling it a road, you guys call it a driveway, but 18-foot wide and over 150 foot long. You know, most driveways aren't that long, you know, unless you live like out in the country somewhere.
BJ, do you have a?
Yes, I have a question for you. Do you have any fencing along that side of your?
I have all fencing that goes all
Chain.
on this side of the property.
What kind of
Chain link.
fencing?
Chain link,
A chain link. How tall?
6 foot.
A 6
Meets
foot.
code for the pool.
So the pool is that close?
Pool is approximately like maybe 15 feet away from that fence. And mind you, the fence is, I don't know, almost depending on the area, it could be 4 to 6 feet from the property line.
Would any shrubs or vegetation help you at all put along that side of the fence?
He is
I know, but
planning
also,
on it, but the problem is, we put it kind of small right now. So, take a truck, snap a pole in half, put vegetation. I'm not complaining about the vegetation he wants to put in. I'm just complaining about the road that's going in.
It's too close.
It's too close to the property line. The buffer ultimately is 5 feet now. You put a road in something, it's no longer a buffer.
what do you think of the project?
Get rid of the house, it's great. You know what I mean? What he's doing is really good. I'm not
That's
complaining
what
about
I
what
was
he's
wondering.
doing, as far as the project goes. I'm just complaining about the road being so close.
If a more robust fence were put there, would that satisfy you?
A larger,
A more robust, crash-resistant, or whatever you want?
You still have grass in here. You know what I mean? You can still push that road over a little bit. It's not gonna hurt anybody. You're not gonna have that much grass in front of your building.
Like, does it have to be 62 feet, I think, which is pretty close to our house, than 100, which it's supposed to be? We just think it's not like a house next to our house, it's an apartment building
Yeah.
that's close to our house, which is a little different than, that kind of.
Mr. Bicho, how far over could you move that building without,
We'd have to reorient the building this way in order to really accomplish anything, because, we only have this much space to go this way, so we have to come this way with the building in order to get there. And then the road would slide this way, the buffer would be a little bigger.
I mean, earlier you said you could move it a little bit and maybe get 80 feet, and you'd still have to
Oh,
get...
yeah, right,
I mean,
what can
could
happen
you-
is
could you
even
get,
if we- Yeah, if we can tilt it this way a little bit, we'd go from 62 to 70 or 72.
But then you could get maybe a 10-foot,
Yeah, that's right. We can move it a little bit and get 10 feet, but to get to 20 feet, we're gonna have to reorient.
and if you put a more robust traffic barrier in that 10 feet, hide it with
Yeah.
shrubbery, could you
Yeah.
do something like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Would that work?
To stop the cars from coming in our yard, for protection kind of thing, if it stops vehicles, because our kids
Yeah,
play back.
we just put ballards in there, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Could you do that?
Oh, yeah, that's not a problem.
oh,
All
that
right.
would be great.
We also had a question on because we have a well in our backyard, and also drainage kind of thing was going on, so I didn't know if that would affect our well with the building.
That should have been addressed, shouldn't it?
I think Lynn Smaller engineer can speak to that.
Let's hear about surface water.
Could I just ask a question? I mean, just so we can get this, is it a 10-foot buffer with bollards, or a 15-foot buffer with bollards, or? Yeah. Right, so, that's what I'm saying, so, I mean, do you want the full 20 feet, or 10 or 15?
We want as far away from,
Yeah.
as far away as we can
Yeah,
get.
okay, so, we'll just do 20 and not ask for the variance at the end of the day.
Then we'll lose the stone wall.
Then we'll lose the stone wall and the trees. We'll still have to reorient the building in order to move that.
And you'll have to relocate the stone wall.
Yeah, we will have to relocate the stone wall.
So could you,
What happens then to the circular traffic pattern?
That would have to go away. There's just no way we can move this way without, we get 20 feet off here, we're gonna end up all the way over here. So, I mean, if we can move it that way, we will. We'll have to have.
Chris, you could do a 10-foot buffer though.
Yeah.
Still keep the basic.
Well, yeah, 10 feet. We can just slide this over 10 feet. We have 22 feet between the corner of the.
And you'd still lose, but you lose the wall.
We're still gonna lose the wall. Yeah.
So that's
right
what
up against the wall. It's right
so
here.
the question would be this, is you're asking him to relocate.
Talking to the mic, please.
You're asking him to relocate the wall?
No, if he relocate, if he has to move the wall because of a condition we impose or a requirement we,
Yeah.
if there's a wall on the property, he's bound by our regulations to relocate it somewhere on that property.
So could, just for asking, could he relocate it between the two properties?
That's
Is
kind of
that-
where I was
that-
going to go.
Is
That's an
that,
idea.
That's kind of where I was going to
I
go.
mean, if, that's almost like a car barrier in itself.
That's where I was going to go with you. yeah.
That's an idea.
The other thing I wanted to ask Chris is, it's currently the way the plan is, and again, my eyes bug out on me here, but the road as it exists on the plan I'm looking at, how far is it away from the property line now? Looks like 5 feet, right? So that's a concern, and I happen to agree with him. I think that's close. I think 10 feet is reasonable. If you can get him 10 feet and put that wall over there, to me, it's a win-win, I think, for everybody here.
10 feet buffer,
Yeah, not 5. It's a 10-foot, the road will be 10 feet away. The road would, correct? That's where I'm going.
Yeah, and that would.
The road, the driveway.
That would preserve the ability to keep this road here.
Yeah, see, that,
Good, okay.
so you'll get 10 feet, so that'll give you a little bit of comfort.
so if we get do the 10 feet,
And then we put
With the stone wall.
We relocate the stone wall from there to there. That would protect any trucks or anything.
I'm more concerned about the back area. I don't know if that's the whole length or what you want.
Yeah, the stone wall runs from
It's a pretty-
here to
pretty
here,
straight.
so we just relocate it up from here to as far as it would go.
Yeah.
It's going to give you
Okay.
some good protection there, I think.
No, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Good.
Well, can I add one other thing? I think what you might be able to do also in that driveway is what's been done in town and other places, traffic calming devices like BJ got on Forest Avenue, a little bumperoo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I share your concern where I live, the delivery trucks are going 80.
Trucks will enter here, well, all of our trucks really come in here, right? Because that's where they go to all the commercial property.
No, but you don't have to, they don't have to put a speed bump in, because if they're out there plowing,
You're a
I
plower.
don't want to hear it.
You're
You know
a
what I mean,
plower.
like, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning and.
Let me ask a question. Given that the applicant is willing to make some changes, would this have to come back for review again? So the best thing here would be to continue this to the next meeting, and in the meantime, you could talk
I
to
think
each
you-
other.
Get approval, just contingent on us having a 10-foot buffer? Where was that?
Well, so technically, the relief that has been requested and advertised is for 5 foot. So if you're now asking for less relief because you're providing a 10-foot buffer, then from a legal standpoint, it doesn't need to be re-advertised or re-noticed. The question is whether the board is comfortable enough with what the reconfiguration is going to look like to be able to proceed to make a decision. So then that's really up to the board.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Good? I'm good. I think the board is fine with the configuration, so long as we can capture it in writing somehow.
And the only other thing would be, I know, and just in terms of conditions, because you do have the right to put conditions on any zoning variances that you're granting, if there's going to be any reconfiguration of the road, you know, one condition might be that there'd be another review by the fire department to make sure that they're
sure.
comfortable with whatever changes are made.
Well, I will say this, if we do the 10-foot buffer, then we won't have to reconfigure the road because we just slide it.
I mean, one of the issues I have is a lot of these waiver requests are going to change.
Okay.
And I think it might be better to continue this and have them come in with a revised plan with the revised requests so that we can look at them. And is that okay?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
If he's agreeable, I'm fine with that too, Paul. That's
Yeah.
not a bad idea.
Are you
But it
agreeable?
sounds like we're close to it, to help out. you guys.
We
Yeah,
want
as
to.
long as we have an agreement, it allows our engineers to move forward and we can kind of go without it.
I think you have an idea of what will work, and the board is receptive to that, so.
We'll reconfigure the plan, it'll all be fine.
Okay, so may I have a motion to continue this item to the January 12th meeting?
Motion made?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? And we will keep the public, it'll still be a public informational meeting, right? Yeah. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the January 12th meeting.
I think that's the right move. And then, I don't know,
Got to do sidewalks.
if you look at section 903, you know,
The next item on the agenda Please take your discussions outside, please. Next item on the agenda is, let's see, it's item 5B. Public hearing, request of the West House Corporation for master plan approval for a comprehensive permit application submitted pursuant to Middletown Zoning Code Article 17, low and moderate income housing comprehensive permit for expansion of an existing multi-family dwelling structure located at 417 Forest Avenue, Assessors Plat 113, Lot 6, and including request for waiver from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, and variances from the Middletown Zoning Code, Code number 602, for a multifamily dwelling project in the office business zoning district. 603 for a 40-foot building where 35 feet is the maximum allowable. 605 for a 42,603 square foot structure where 35,000 is the maximum allowable. 1304 for 61 parking spaces where 104 is required. 1504 for exceeding the allowable density in a multifamily dwelling project. 1505 for less than the minimum open space requirements in a multifamily dwelling project. 1507 for parking areas closer than 25 feet to the proposed structure, and 1508 for a facade greater than 80 feet without articulation in a multifamily dwelling project. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Gerard Galvin for the West House Corporation. We're here before you with an application for the comprehensive permit, as you just read into the record. This is for a second phase of the very successful West House project that currently exists on Forest Ave. This proposed phase will also front on Enterprise Drive. As you are aware, Rhode Island has imposed on cities and towns the obligation to enhance its stock of low and moderate income affordable housing, and to streamline and expedite the approval of low-income housing, this comprehensive permit process was created. To apply under this process, a project must make at least 25% of its housing low or moderate income housing. We're here tonight with a project that proposes 100% of the housing that it creates to be low or moderate income housing. It's also going to be dedicated to the elderly population. Now, in assessing applications and relief, or requests for relief in this process, you don't go through the typical analysis that the zoning board would for variances or special use permits. Rather, you have to make particular findings, which Ron, as always, has laid out very well for you in the memo, and you also have to go through a balancing test on what would be zoning variances and weigh those issues against the need in Middletown for low-income housing. Now, the need here has been well established. It's specifically addressed in your comprehensive plan. Several of our witnesses will be addressing that. But this project is clearly directly on point to the needs. I do want to point out a few specific things. As mentioned, this use is typically not allowed in an office park. But in this case, this exact use, low-income elderly housing, has existed on this same lot very successfully for many years. There have not been issues created with the neighborhood either on the commercial side or on the side that abuts residential zones. And it has been so successful that it's generated significant wait lists for units. And we're hoping that this will address some of that need. So this project has been through the Technical Review Committee with a favorable recommendation with certain conditions. It has also been through the Conservation Commission with a positive recommendation. And I want to make clear as well. I know you've seen a comprehensive permit process come before you before, but one that was clouded with some mixed use, a mix of both affordable and market rate housing, and this is not that. There's no mixed use, there's no differentiation between market units and low income. So we hope you'll see this as a very straightforward application solely designed to meet the need for affordable housing. Tonight I have Christian Belden here, the Executive Director of Church Community Housing. The civil engineer company is Insight Engineering. They're represented tonight by Louis Gentile. Jim Hool is here to comment on consistency with the comprehensive plan and that balancing test that we mentioned previously. And I have architect Paul Adaman from Union Studios to speak to the design of the building and some of the waivers that we're requesting.
Okay. I'll get a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I may have asked this question before, but I'll ask it again. My definition of affordable housing has three different groups of people. Economically eligible, workforce, and old people, senior citizens like me. So I think when I asked this question before, I was told whoever gets to the door first gets in. So I don't know if that's how the system works, or whoever's going to administer the program, that would be the way it would work. But I think each one of those groups has a need, and decisions have to be made on who gets it. We're getting much better here. We have a lot of stuff going on right now in affordable housing in Middletown, but I worry about that.
I think totally valid concern. I will point out that the comp plan, and Ms. Poole, I think, will address this, but there is specific reference to the need for increasing affordable housing for the elderly so that, you know, current residents here can age in town in place. And different trends in the population declining or an increase in certain populations for the elderly will reflect that there's a greater need for that. We're trying to address that need. Now, as to who qualifies, how people will get in, my first witness will be Christian Belden, Executive Director of Church Community. And I'll invite him up now, and he can speak to some of those threshold requirements. And
Let me just add one other. I'm also on a committee for affordable housing in the town, and quite frankly, their focus has been elderly housing at this particular point. So, but I'm just trying to think of everybody that needs it, and
well, we would not contest that there's a broad need for a lot of different groups for low and moderate income housing. This project is going to be designed to that, but I know Christian is always looking for other opportunities to address the other groups as well.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll introduce Christian. Come on up. I don't think we go through the swearing in aspect here, but Christian, what's your position with Church Community?
I'm the executive director.
Could you use the hand mic so that it gets recorded?
Sure.
Thank you.
And could you explain the relationship between Church Community Housing and West House, both Phase 1, which exists, and this proposed Phase 2?
Yes. West House is a single-purpose, nonprofit entity created by Church Community Housing Corporation to facilitate the development of the 50 units of affordable elderly housing that exists there. It's very common in our portfolio to have these affiliated entities that Church Community Housing controls by appointing the members of the board of directors, and that's the relationship here. Furthermore, we have a memorandum of understanding in place between Church Community Housing and the West House Corporation, authorizing Church Community Housing to act as the developer for this proposed expansion that's before you tonight.
And how long has West House 1 been in operation?
Since 1996.
And can you describe how that operation has unfolded and what the wait list is like for additional units?
Sure. That operation is a HUD Section 202 development. That's the HUD program that used to produce the largest amount of elderly affordable housing it was a great program. It provided all of the funding for both construction and ongoing operating support. Unfortunately, that program has been underfunded in recent years and hasn't continued to produce elderly housing since then. Recently, although with some of the new funding that appears to be on the horizon, it may be coming back into the fold. That being said, it's existed as an ongoing successful HUD 202 elderly affordable housing development since 1996, and continues to operate
And
well.
do those HUD 202 and the requirements that come along with that funding establish some of the eligibility and restrictions that come along with who can live there?
They do, yes.
Okay, what are the age restrictions associated with what you're applying for funding for West House 2?
Well, we're not sure yet. As I just mentioned, if the HUD 202 program comes back, we would be applying for that funding. In that instance, the age limit would be 62 years of age or older. However, if that funding doesn't come back, we'll be applying for other funding sources which may or may not have an age restriction associated with them. That said, as you know, we are applying here for this permit for housing for persons 55 years of age or older. As you referenced, there is need for other types of affordable housing in the town. We're very aware of that and are working right now on putting together additional deals that would be for workforce housing or family affordable housing. But here at this location, because there's an existing elderly affordable housing development, we would only see it fitting to add additional elderly affordable housing units here.
All right, now, can you speak a little bit to the amount of affordable housing Middletown is supposed to have, how much it does currently have, and what this project will achieve for the town in that regard?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just, I don't know how familiar you are with Church Community Housing as an organization. I'll just give a brief background. And so Church Community Housing is a nonprofit 501c3. We were established in 1969 by a group of churches that came together because they saw that their members were living in substandard housing conditions. They quickly realized that in order to be able to access federal funds, they needed to create a 501c3 organization, that there had to be separation of church and state. So we were then created as a 501c3 nonprofit organization without any religious affiliation at that point forward. Since then, we've developed over 1,000 units of housing, almost entirely within Newport County. We view ourselves as the local community development corporation. So we see it as our job to be responsive to the housing needs of the communities that we work in. In Middletown, and a brief background of West House, it was developed as a part of the Gilbane Corporation office complex. It was built as an office building, which means that it has a significantly larger amount of parking provided than you need for elderly affordable housing. The parking needs for an office building are much greater than they are for elderly affordable housing. Also, it has a tremendous amount of common space that wouldn't typically be built for elderly affordable housing because it was built as an office building. So typically you have a central corridor with apartments on either side. In this instance, you had offices around the perimeter and then offices in the middle with a perimeter hallway. And so now those offices on the perimeter have been converted to apartments, but the space in the middle is now a number of different types of common space, amenities, lounges, rooms for visiting nurses, dining rooms, computer labs, that kind of thing. So it's sort of a unique development in that way. As the local community development corporation, we looked at Middletown, we watched what was happening with Berkeley Peckham School, and we saw that the town was really trying to produce some elderly affordable housing. It had a misstep there, it didn't go forward. And so we tried to think creatively about how could we address this need. And I don't think it comes as any surprise to you that Middletown has an aging demographic or that there's an affordability crisis, but I can give you some information to back that up. The American Community Survey, which is the most reliable demographic survey outside of the 10-year census, says that between 2010 and 2019, the population of persons aged 60 years or older in Middletown has increased by 25%. So the population is aging in Middletown. Furthermore, there's an affordability crisis going on. The average price of a single-family home increased from $360,000 to $450,000 in the 5 years between 2015 and 2020, and then just in the last 12 months, it's increased another 18% to $524,000. Similarly, we've seen rent increases that are along the same lines. In the last year, we've seen the average price for a 2-bedroom apartment go from $1,500 to over $1,700 just in the last year. And so you have these combining factors. You have an aging population and an affordability crisis that is really making the need for elderly affordable housing just immense today. In terms of the amount of affordable housing that Middletown has, you currently have 5.16% of your housing stock is affordable. That's 355 units are affordable presently. As you know, the state mandates that every municipality provide 10% of the housing stock is affordable. In order to get to 10%, you need to produce another 337 units of affordable housing. We're proposing 54 new units of elderly affordable housing here in this proposal. If approved, once constructed, it will increase your percentage from 5.16% to 5.9%, which doesn't sound like a huge increase. However, of the 355 existing units of affordable housing, only 26% of those, or 92 units, are for the elderly, 50 of which are the ones that already exist at West House. So we're proposing a 59% increase to the amount of elderly affordable housing that presently exists in Middletown through this proposal. In terms of wait lists, because we own several elderly affordable housing developments, so those are the statistics, but we see it every day. Every month I get a report from our property manager that states we're fully occupied, and at West House we have 109 applicants on the wait list. At Mumford Manor we have 196 applicants on the wait list. At Harbor House we have 330 applicants on the wait list. At Anthony House we have 111 applicants on the wait list. So those are just our elderly affordable housing developments here on Aquidneck Island. There is a tremendous need for what we're proposing.
And just to follow up on Mr. Weber's question.
Closer to the mic, please.
I'm sorry, yeah, just to follow up on Mr. Weber's question. The wait lists for what already exists are well established, but how does Church Community or the West House, the different phases, go about selecting who's going to reside there?
Sure. We can't discriminate, but I can tell you I don't know if you have followed along what we've been working on in Portsmouth, but we recently put together a presentation, created a video to try to address this question that we get all the time. Because the answer is that the only people that want to live in a particular place have a connection to that place. And so we gave the property managers a day's notice and came with a video crew and interviewed our residents at our developments and asked them, how did you come to live in this apartment? And without exception, they either were from that town, grew up in that town, or they had family that lived there and they would come and visit during the summer, or they worked there and so came to know the community that way. In some instances, particularly in the elderly affordable housing developments, you have family members that now live in that town and they want their parents or parent to be closer, and so then that's how the parent comes to reside in that housing development, even though they may not be from the area themselves. Their children want them closer to be able to, ensure that they're healthy and doing well, and so that they can see the grandkids if they have any. So the answer is we can't limit the applicants to being Middletown residents, but I would be happy to bring any of you on a tour of any of our developments and to have you ask any of our residents how it is that they came to live there, because you'll find that you have to build these developments in order to have housing available for your residents. Even though you can't put limitations on that, the housing that you build ultimately becomes available for the people that you want it to house.
Just to bring that back around, is it a first come, first served proposition in terms of your applicant pool and how somebody applies for and gets a unit?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you get your certificate of occupancy and you start offering the units for sale, you create a waiting list. And it's all driven by the waiting list after that.
So let me even go further. I mean, have you got a mix in some of your affordable housing where you've got all those three groups together? Or what I'm thinking about, if you've got a lot of seniors, that's a special group. Do you think, is that going to work?
We're not proposing that. Again, we're proposing 100% elderly affordable housing here. We are not proposing any workforce, any family. It is only elderly affordable housing here. No, the answer is no. We generally do not see integration of those types. Yes, if you were doing workforce, maybe you would do a 20-25% family affordable housing into that workforce. But elderly housing, it just needs to be 100%.
Well, and I guess if I go this further, I'll probably be crucified for saying this, but for certain groups that get affordable housing, there's a stigma for a variety of reasons. But I would think that they're a little bit different. I'm talking about people that are economically disadvantaged. I mean, a lot of times people are looked upon in a different way, which is not right, but that's the way a lot of people take care of that particular identification. So we're going to focus mostly on chronologically challenged.
That's the focus tonight, but I know Christian would love to come back here with another project down the line.
Yeah, we don't say old people anymore because we are,
Right.
Chronologically challenged is us.
All right. Well, Christian will remain available, but I'm thinking that what I'd like to do now, unless you have any more questions for him, is invite Paul Adaman up. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Come on up. Paul is from Union Studios, and he's going to present some of the renderings here with the project. And I'll just begin by asking you to, I don't believe you've appeared in Middletown before and been accepted as an expert.
Correct.
Okay, so could you describe your educational background briefly for the board?
Sure. In 1994, I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design with a Bachelor of Architecture and Fine Arts. In 2004 or 5, I became a registered architect in Rhode Island, and I started pretty much immediately after graduation with my architectural career. I've been working in Rhode Island since year 2000, doing a lot of affordable housing projects in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. I've testified before many boards all across the state, planning, zoning, and town councils, all about planning and architecture, and particularly and specifically affordable housing.
So based on that history, I'd ask that he be accepted as an expert in the field of architecture.
So noted.
I would vouch for Paul. I believe, Paul, are you still on the zoning board in Warren?
Bill, no, a year ago I stepped down, January.
I recognize the name. Nice to see you again. Thank you.
And for 10 years I served on the zoning board in Warren.
Yes, you did.
So Paul, I think if you could just maybe walk us through the project and some of the renderings, and as you go through, we'll be trying to hit some of the issues that are the basis for waiver requests, so some of that information can be discussed.
Great, thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Pleasure to be here tonight. Next slide, please. I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to rely on Ron to advance the slides. Okay. I'm a senior associate at Union Studio. We're a Providence-based firm. We have now 27 employees. We've been established since 2001. And we have a lot of work in Rhode Island and around the region and nationally too. And the Union Studio was established with one overriding goal, is to use our skills as architects and urban designers to make a civic contribution to all communities of all types. Next, please. And what that means is we're very mission-based. We're really dedicated to enrich lives and strengthen communities. Next slide. Whether it's affordable housing, planning, good developer housing, Tiverton Library up on the upper left-hand side, student housing, and even on the lower right, Water Over headquarters in Warren, which is a corporate headquarters. So whatever project comes through the door, we put the community and our clients and people first. I'd like to just go through the existing conditions briefly. You probably know the site very well. It's a couple hundred yards behind your backs, on the end of Enterprise Drive on the west side, and then the frontage is on Forest Avenue on the east side. It's a large parcel, and as Mr. Belden mentioned earlier, it was developed years ago as a part of an office park, and in the late 90s it was converted into, the existing building was converted into elderly affordable housing. Next. Looking specifically at the site, the frontage along Forest Avenue, that's the main entrance to the existing building with a parking field in front of the front door on the east side. On the west side is a large parking lot that was considered for office use, and Mr. Belden has confirmed that there's very little parking used by the residents currently at West House 1. What I'd like to point to you, which is hard to see from this slide, is the east part of the site is much higher in grade than the western side. So from the west facade of the existing building, it's a steady slope down away from the building toward Enterprise Drive. And that is significant in what we're proposing architecturally, because the finished floor level of the existing building needs to be considered for this addition and connecting an interior circulation from the existing building to the new building, or the new addition, I should say. It's not really a building, it's technically an addition. This here is the site plan. There's going to be, we're proposing 2 curb cuts. One would be a loop drive to the front door of the rear addition with a convenience parking, as you've seen. Maybe I'll just come right up here on the right-hand side. And then we have another drive lane on the very west boundary to provide service access and more parking for residents on the north side. And the reason we did that is so that we could preserve an existing loading area for the existing building and provide trash hauling as well. And we played around with a lot of configurations, and this direct east-west access was determined to be most suitable for the parking and the site circulation, but also to provide unobstructed views of the existing residents toward the west. Because of the sloping site, this building is set down lower than the existing building. Our civil engineer will go through some more details of the site planning. Next, please. And in terms of the floor plan, it's very straightforward. It's double loaded, very efficient, unlike West House 1, which is not very efficient. But as Mr. Belden mentioned, because of the inefficiency of West House 1, there's a lot of public amenity spaces for the residents, both the existing residents and the new residents for West House 2, which is the addition. There's 54 units, 40 of which are 1 bedrooms, and the rest are 2 bedrooms. The floor plans are predominantly the same for the first, second, and third floors. On the first floor, we have a front entrance on the south side, and then we have another north entrance for the people that are parking on the north side of the building. It's elevator serviced. I should point out that on the very east side, this is the point of connection. There's an existing sunroom on the first floor that we will be connecting to with a new entrance and a south patio to provide some nice southern exposure seating outside. And then that's connected to an existing garden up high on the south side of the existing building. But then that is our transition area where we have steps down to about 5.5 feet from the existing finished floor elevation down to the first floor elevation of the new building. Next, please. Not much to add on the second and third floor plans. And then I'd like to jump to the elevations, the proposed elevations. It is a flat roof. There's a few reasons for that, as I mentioned to you before. One is to minimize the obstruction of views to the west in Newport Bridge, or the Claiborne Pell Bridge now. I still can't, it's still Newport Bridge to me. And then there's, because the flat roof will also have some condensing units, as well as future solar array to help provide power to the new addition. I know there's been some comments about why isn't there a pitched roof. As you can see, there's a little bit of a pitched roof on the existing part of the existing building beyond, but that there was an addition when it was converted to housing to make a central atrium in the existing building to bring light into the front entry foyer. And also, there's a 2-story manager's apartment, and so they have a benefit of a top story for a bedroom there. So it's only a little part of that building, and it was really designed as an architectural element to provide sunlight to the main foyer.
So can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Where do you hide the heating and cooling stuff?
Well, we are proposing, which is not in your plans, but we've developed a little bit more. We have a partial basement.
Okay.
So a lot of the mechanical and electrical will be in the basement. And if this is the west elevation, which is facing Enterprise Drive, this is sort of now a walkout basement, and our basement access will be on that side.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Next, please. This here's the north elevation, very similar to the south elevation. Next. We are proposing some very traditional type materials. The siding is a cementitious or composite siding, which is to mimic clapboard siding, but it'll be painted. It's very high, it's very useful in terms of maintenance and cost. It's easy to maintain, easy to paint, and it looks very traditional. We have some painted steel frame porches for the front entry area and the porch on the south side of the L wing. And then we're proposing some stone veneer on that raised patio. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Well, I could add that
I'm sorry?
if I see another flat roof, I think I'm going to jump off it. But we have been fighting a battle here for about 100 years to make things look somewhat interesting and like it's New England. And I always encourage, if there's any wiggle room to make it look unflat or a little bit different, a little gable or something like that, I personally would appreciate, and I think everybody else would, because quite frankly, when you look at a flat building, it could be a prison, or it could be something. And I think it could be more interesting if we got some kind of a roof variation. I'm not sure what it might be, because I'm not an architect, but I'm just hoping maybe that we can do something that's a little bit more interesting.
Okay, we'll
I
take
just
that
put
into
that out,
consideration.
yeah,
Yep.
because I say that all the time. 99% of the time, nothing happens, but maybe I'll get lucky.
You might have to live in that prison someday.
Yeah.
50%, 50%. 50%.
Careful what you wish for, kid.
Yeah.
Next, please. And I'd briefly like to just walk you through some of the variances and waivers that we're requesting. Next. It's just an arrow. Yep, there we go. One, as Mr. Gerard mentioned earlier, was that The first one is the use variance that we're requesting. That is affordable senior housing here on this site, which is an office district zone. The next is a footprint, which of the building itself. And again, all these are taken into consideration of the entire site, which includes the existing building and the existing parking, because it is all one parcel. The footprint exceeds, it's proposed at 42,603, which where 24,973 is required.
Strike that, 35,000 is required.
Oh,
Or is the, right.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
24 is what exists currently.
When you add, yes, sorry. So when you add the new,
Right.
that's the total. I'm sorry, yep. And then the building height, although 35 is required, we took a conservative approach, and we measured the existing grade from the addition, and recognizing that so much of the building is not attached to the existing building, and our building height, if you measure from the average existing grade of the addition, would result in a building height of 40 feet. However, going back to what I said earlier, if we take the entire building, both the existing and the new, the calculus of an average existing grade is actually 31 foot 4 inches, and therefore we're under the allowable limit.
And I just want to point that out, that rather than not apply for the waiver and tell you that, you know, we're only 31 feet tall from average grade, when at actual grade for this new phase, we're at 40. Although I think we could get away with it, we'd rather present that height waiver to you so that it's transparent and achieve the waiver. But we do think that, you know, you could look at this as the 31-foot height and it not be required. We just wanted to explain that to you, that on a couple of these waivers, we've taken the conservative viewpoint to make the request. We would like those waivers to be granted, although there might be some arguments that exist for why they might not be necessary.
Thank you. The next one is parking, where 104 are required for both West House 1 and West House 2 for a multifamily building. There's 39 existing spaces, and we're proposing some more for a total of 61. And so that is under the required threshold. But I think the reason for that is that this is senior housing, and I'll have some documentation in a few minutes to show what the real needs are for senior housing within the church community housing portfolio projects, similar projects, that the average is well under the required amount by the zoning ordinance. The next is density, where it's taken into consideration how much square feet of land is required for 1 bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment. The existing, considering just the existing building, that it's 200,000 plus, and then with a combined amount of West House 1 and 2, we're up to requesting a variance of 200,689 square feet. Similarly, the open space requirement, which I think Louis Gentile can probably talk to a little bit more about, is the average ratio, the floor area ratio. We're under the 1.5 requirement, and we're proposing 0.88. Off-street parking, this is in relation to proximity to the building, parking to the building, and we are, in order to provide parking for the residents on the north and south side, and the configuration of the building, and trying to maintain a buffer on the north side and the west side, our off-street parking is closer to the proposed structure than is required from the ordinance, which is 25 feet. And then finally, the building design, where 85 feet of non-interrupted facade is allowed, the maximum amount. We have 83 feet 10 inches proposed, so that's something that I think we can make go away when we come back to you at the preliminary. That's an easy thing to incorporate and comply with in the revised building plan.
maybe, since you're here, I might just ask you, the next slide gets into some of the waivers from the subdivision requirements. Some of these, again, are commonsensical, but we'll run through them. There's no bicycle racks proposed here. I don't know if, you can speak to that a little bit. Christian might be able to, but there's very little demand for the bike racks at the senior housing units that church community runs, so that's not part of the application. We're seeking a waiver there. The next one, Paul, you can speak to, which relates to the composite material being used as opposed to some of the more traditional materials. And if you could speak, you mentioned it before, but just hit that point again.
Sure. I know in the ordinance, it looks to use wood clapboards as much as possible. However, for building this size and this type, wood clapboards is expensive, hard to maintain over the long run, and there's a lot of other good products that mimic traditional lap siding. LP Smart Side Strand is such a product, and it has good maintenance. It's a wood composite material, and it takes paint very well. And then we also have an EPDM rubber roof on the roof instead of asphalt shingles, which is typically used in a pitched roof.
And the last one mentioned here, again, is the flat roof. We've heard Mr. Weber's comments on that. I'm thinking we would like to continue to request the waiver tonight. We'll take those comments under additional advisement as we proceed through the process. But I know that there were some reasons for that design.
In particularly to house some condensing units, which are for the air conditioning, and then also most importantly, the developer's goal to provide solar power to the existing, the new addition. Currently, right, Christian, the solar arrays being installed on the West House 1, on the existing. So it is already in motion on the existing building, and they plan to do it also on the addition.
So before you leave that, you're putting solar panels on the new building as well. Will they be shielded from view from the ground?
The building is high enough because the grade along Enterprise Drive continues to drop down. So you have the advantage that the panels will be higher up. They'll be set back a minimum distance from the edge of the building.
Well, the ordinance has a requirement for shielding, and you should make sure you're meeting that requirement.
Okay, thank you. We'll take.
You can use some nice roof design options to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. I already covered the request for parking, but here are some more details of what we're proposing, which is really essentially 0.58 spaces per dwelling unit. The next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an inventory of their church community housing's current holdings and for senior housing. At Bellevue House, the average, the proposed parking spaces per dwelling unit is 0.83. Anthony House is 0.67. Harbor House is 0.63. These were all taken from, confirmed with aerial photos, and then we double checked with the property manager for a more accurate account. So we've tested it both ways just to make sure. And then the next slide, there's some more projects that really illustrate the real need for parking in these sort of projects. And so at the very far right, West House, the proposed is 0.58. Next. So this is just a little bit more of a detail of the building height calculation, which I ran through with you a few minutes ago. So I won't dwell on this anymore unless you have any questions.
What's on the left side there? I noticed something that's not flat. What's that little thing? How'd that happen? That little gray thing on the left-hand side of that building there.
This here?
Yeah, holy
Well,
cow.
it's a parapet with a curved
That was there. That's on
or angled cornice line.
We've already solved that issue.
Whoa.
We're going the right direction,
Merry
right?
Christmas, you know, hey.
Next, please.
Get late.
And then that concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back to
Yes, so
Galvin
we'll
and
call Louis Gentili? Gentili. Thank
We're
you.
in overtime, yeah.
So, Louis, you're here on behalf of Insight Engineering, correct?
Correct.
Please identify yourself first.
Hi, my name is Louis Gentili, here on behalf of Insight Engineering.
Now, the site plans that are part of the package and the project are under the stamp of Paul Carlson, who you work with at Insight, correct?
Correct. I work under his supervisor.
And he's a professional engineer.
Yes.
And you are a professional engineer in training.
Correct.
Can you explain your educational background, please?
Sure. So in 2018, I graduated from Roger Williams University with a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering with a civil specialization. In 2019, I passed state certification to become a Rhode Island Certified Engineer in Training. After 4 years of working under a certified professional engineer, I will be eligible to take the placement exam and get my official stamp to become a professional engineer myself.
Okay. So Paul stamped these plans, but you work closely with Paul in the development of all of these plans, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you're in a position to answer any of the board's questions that they might have tonight about any of the engineering or technical questions that they might have?
Certainly.
Okay. And before they might have any questions, I wanted to ask a couple of specific questions.
Okay.
The whole phase 2 here of the development is going to be placed on what's currently an asphalt parking lot, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And so this project is actually going to reduce the amount of impervious lot coverage on the site, correct?
Correct. By about 15%.
Okay. Now, from your perspective, are there any negative environmental impacts associated with this proposal?
Not at all.
And it improves the condition on the grounds, correct?
Correct.
And why is that? How is that?
So currently, there is no sort of treatment for the stormwater that's on this site. No infiltration basins or underground infiltration systems. When we're going into this project and developing it further, as said previously, we will be reducing the impervious area, but we will also be providing water treatment to meet recharge and water quality standards that are in place by Rhode Island DEM.
Excuse me, Paul, Gerard, before you go forward, believe it or not, we actually have an audience watching this live, and they've texted me. It happens to be one of our former members who's watching. If you don't mind talking into the mic, he's having a hard time hearing. Not you, but you, Gerard, yourself. So, thank you. We have an audience, believe it or not.
All right. Now, can you speak to whether the design by Insight adequately addresses vehicular and pedestrian safety?
Sure.
I don't know if you might want to flip forward or to one of the other site plans, Ron, thanks.
You know where you want to go?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure. So for pedestrian and vehicular safety here, we've ensured that the roads were designed with adequate width to provide two-way traffic where necessary. And we've increased the plan to allow that emergency vehicles can navigate to the back of the property and to the front of the property and, enter and exit when needed. To address pedestrian safety, it's important to note that all sidewalks and handicap parking have been designed to be compliant with ADA standards to ensure that there isn't going to be a struggle while navigating around. This is elderly housing, so we want to make sure we're accommodating their needs.
Okay. And the project will be connected to town sewer and water, correct?
Yes, it will.
And it will have adequate access to public streets, those streets being Enterprise Way and Forest Avenue, correct?
Yes.
And this is not a subdivision application, so there won't be a creation of any new lot, correct?
Nope. Correct.
All right. And again, as far as from your professional experience, will this site design create any negative impacts to the health and safety of the residents?
No, I would say that it would improve them.
Okay.
So I assume, because we're at master plan, yet to be provided at preliminary will be your water treatment plan and things like that, right?
Correct. They will
Yeah.
be finalized in our preliminary, but
Yeah.
we do have quite substantial development even at this phase that I can provide.
No,
some
that's
answer-
fine, but I see some advantages to that, but I'm curious about what they are, but we'll get them at preliminary.
Yes, and the TRC did, make those further
Yeah.
requirements a condition.
Correct.
Preliminary.
Mhm.
Okay. Unless-
I just have a question. The road and circle to the south of the new building that you put in there, I know the TRC looked at this. I'm just curious, that curve is pretty tight. It's okay with the fire department?
The fire department has provided us with a churning radius template, and I've been able to fit that template onto our plan and ensure that maneuverability of those vehicles is manageable, yes.
And that's another thing, in addition to the stormwater, that there'll be more detail on, at the request of the TRC as part of the preliminary plan.
Does that turn radius require that there's no permanent parking in that area? You know, is it just open for people that come by and drop people off? Or suppose somebody parks there for, a while and then the fire truck comes in. Will that impede the turning radius?
The fire truck can maneuver theoretically if all parking spots were filled under my calculations.
Mhm.
So they wouldn't impede it.
How about their calculations?
It fits the template that they provided and the radiuses that they
You
specified.
got to make sure that they're satisfied.
Yeah.
How big are the units? Are they, square footage for like a single and a two-bedroom unit?
Yeah, do you mind if I defer to Paul for that?
Hi, Paul again. The one bedrooms are under 600 square feet and the two bedrooms are under 800.
Okay.
Okay, unless there are any more questions for Louis, I'm going to call Jim Hool. Mr. Hool? Now, I know some of the witnesses we brought forward tonight are unfamiliar to the board, but I believe you've all recognized Mr. Hool, and he's been accepted as an expert many times.
So noted.
Okay, and what I'd like to do is pass out Mr. Hool's report, if I could, and I'll ask you, as I'm doing that, if you could explain what you were brought in to consult on here with respect to the comp plan
Sure.
and the balancing tests that the planning board will be going through.
Sure. Before I do that, though, there's a couple of points that I wanted to bring up that may or may not have been covered. I didn't hear Christian exactly talk about it, but through my work both with the tax assessment departments of the communities in throughout Newport County, it's very important to bring up that because we're a 501c3, does not exclude them from paying property taxes. That they pay property taxes on all the properties that they own or are managed in Newport County. So that wouldn't impact, there's no loss of tax revenue from any of the projects. So I just wanted to bring that up because that is a fairly important factor. The other thing too is, just as a side note, they do a lot of, through my own appraisal work, I'm familiar with a lot of workforce type housing that they have done themselves through the years. They've been, as Christian said, they've been in business since 1969. So they have addressed workforce housing as well and would continue to do so. However, specifically, this project, in my analysis, was based strictly on the elderly project, the extension of the existing West House. And so You know, a lot of it has actually, a lot of my points that I'm going to bring up have actually already been addressed by Christian and by Paul. So I'm not going to bore you to tears. I'm going to keep my presentation as simple as possible. I know it's late as well, so we don't want to hang around here all night. However, there are two primary issues that I considered. The one is whether or not the project is compatible with the comprehensive community plan. And the second thing, and probably more important, is the fact of how the requests for all the zoning variances are impacted by this request, or how we address them within the request. And essentially, that really, those two areas are the most critical, both in terms of what the state requirements are and of course the local requirements. So one of the points that Christian brought up was that the Middletown is actually increasing its, do you mind if I use this one a little bit? Okay, yeah, if you don't mind. Middletown is actually increasing by percentage the amount of elderly that it has in terms of its population. So it becomes very important to address a group of people that are basically generally on fixed income. Christian has already talked about the number of people who are on waiting lists to get into each of the projects. My mother-in-law was in West House for a period of about 5 or 6 years before she couldn't exist on her own. These are independent living situations. So I know that it's an extremely well managed, a very good project. And what the, so I look at it that way in terms of the fact that you have a need because of the increased amount of housing for elderly that is going to become increasingly important. We look to the location of West House. The location of West House is very centrally located. It's close to, it's on a road that allows easy access for emergency vehicles. It's at a transitional point between some commercial and some residential. So it's really actually a very good location for that reason. And it's very close to where the public transportation is access, which is also a requirement. One of the other items that Middletown has in the comp plan in terms of the 10-year plan to increase affordable housing is to have reduced housing costs. You have an underutilized parking area that is in the back of an existing, very successful elderly complex now. This is simply an extension of that. You're doubling essentially doubling the number of units. And of course, because the town needs them, the idea of being able to have such an affordable location that already exists, that already that has shown no impact at all negatively to any of the properties around it, is very good. It's perfect for affordable housing for that reason, which is goal number 5 of the Middletown list of on their 10-year plan. Goal number 6, meet the 10% requirement. Christian already talked about the fact that Middletown already only has about just over half, 5.1%, of the needed affordable housing to fit the 10% state requirement. One of the things that Mr. Weber brought up was about the need for several other kinds of affordable housing, and I could not agree more. We see that need every day in the real estate industry. It is just, it's become even more pronounced as we introduce things like short-term rentals, which has taken a whole bunch of affordable houses out of the market. It's a staggering loss, and I see it because my firm was asked by the town of Middletown to do the safety inspections for the short-term rentals this year. And what we saw was incredible how much of the housing has been removed from the market and how high the values have been driven by having just that one element. And so I think that's a very important factor.
It is. Maybe we can focus on some of the
Zoning.
the waiver requirements and why, in light of how planning board has to look at this and this balancing test, why this need that you just articulated outweighs those local concerns. And in particular, if you could focus on the density.
Hold your mic up.
If you could focus on the density waiver that we're seeking, and also the open space. There are some of these standards that exist in zoning that, in particular for an elderly housing development, are not wouldn't be deemed critical to their success, and the waivers would be appropriate here.
Well, I think that it's very important when we're addressing this to note that the comprehensive plan, when it talks about comprehensive permits, talks about how the need for affordable housing, specifically in regards to the zoning code and subdivision regulations, could be waived or should be waived if the overarching need for the affordable housing outweighs it, essentially, becomes much more important than each of the minor issues. One of the litany of all the required variances where Paul had brought up to you, I addressed each of them. Basically, I looked at each of them in my report. Gerard wanted me to comment on the density. I think that this is really, I don't think that, when we look at density, we're looking at balancing, any planner would balance out the density and the cost of to services for the city and the cost of the city when you talk about density. And I think that when you have elderly, you're talking about people that essentially no longer are putting kids in the school system. I doubt very seriously they have had many fire or police calls to West House or any of the other elderly complexes on the island. So I think that when you look at it, I think it doesn't have that same balancing need for the services and density, that you can expand the density and really not put any kind of a bite on the city's budget. And I think that's very important. And also, this is a great location for it because it's already there and it's tucked in back into a parking lot that's really not being used.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Houle?
No, I'd like to make a comment. Having gone through comprehensive plan, 2 of them, and trying to come up with affordable housing, we run into the same problem. And the only way around it that we discovered was zoning intensification. And that's something the citizens don't want in Middletown. However, the sites that are being selected now for affordable housing, I think, are acceptable because they're in the right place and at the right time. So the state is doing what the towns don't want to do. Their zoning is being intensified to get to affordable housing. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I just point that out. That was our dilemma each time for affordable housing. Where do you intensify places to put affordable housing groups? And it's a difficult decision.
It is a difficult decision, and really nationwide, that's become a really hot button issue. There are several places that have actually gotten rid of single-family zoning so that they could have Minneapolis, Los Angeles. Yeah. They've totally gotten rid of single-family zoning so that they could intensify density for exactly that reason. However, this, specific to what you're saying, and I've already said it, but I'm going to re-emphasize it, it's really a perfect location for it because it's already there and it's sort of hidden from view, and it's in an area that's already being underutilized, so it's really perfect for it.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Houle? Do you have any more witnesses?
No more witnesses, Mr. Chair. You know, I leave it to you as to how you. wish
We'll
to-
get to that.
Yes.
First of all, any members of the public who wish to speak? They've all gone home.
Ward them down.
Okay, what I would like to do is to go down the requests for zoning relief, take them one by one, as we did in the last one, and vote on each one, then move on to the waiver requests, vote on them, vote on each request, and then, assuming we get through
Close
those
the public hearing.
favorably, then we'll take the motion for master plan approval.
Do you want to close the public hearing or keep it open?
We have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Motion's made and seconded to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is closed. We'll start with the request for zoning relief. The first one, Ron, is this list current and we should follow this list? Okay. The first one is paragraph 602, schedule of district regulations and uses. Multifamily dwelling projects are not permitted in an office business district. They are requesting a variance on that.
Make a motion to support that variance?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Second is paragraph 603, district dimensional regulations, maximum building height is 35 feet. A 40-foot structure is proposed. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve this request. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. The third one is paragraph 605, maximum building footprint, 35,000 square feet. Proposed structure is a total of 42,603 square feet. May I have a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Number 4, paragraph 1304, minimum and maximum off-street parking requirements, elderly housing, 1 space per dwelling unit. 104 spaces are required, 61 parking spaces are proposed. May I have a motion to accept this request?
So moved.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 5, paragraph 1504, maximum density in a multifamily dwelling structure. For the proposed mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, 654,000 square feet of lot area is required, where 200,689 square feet exists. May I have a motion for this
So moved.
request?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The request is approved. Number 6, paragraph 1505, open space requirement in a multifamily dwelling structure. Ratio of open space divided by floor area must exceed 1.5. Proposed open space is 110,039 square feet, where 186,025 square feet is required. May I have a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The request is approved. Item 7, paragraph 1507B. No off-street parking area shall be located within 25 feet of any wall of a principal building except a garage, used for residential purposes along which is located an entrance or exit generally intended for use by residents thereof, or along which are located windows serving habitable rooms less than 10 feet above the ground. Proposed parking is approximately 19.5 feet from the building. May I have a motion to approve this request?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved. The request is approved. Number 8, paragraph 1508B, no facade of any principal building in any multifamily dwelling project or structure shall exceed 80 lineal feet without a building jog of at least 45 degrees for a building having 2 wings, or 30 degrees for a building having 3 or more wings. Facade is approximately 83 feet without a jog. May I have a motion to approve this request?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve this request. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This request is approved. We'll move on to the requested waivers. The first requested waiver, 521.1E, 4 bicycle rack shall be provided, minimum 1 bicycle space per 5 automobile parking spaces or fraction thereof. No bicycle racks are proposed. May I have a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made. Is there any discussion?
I think a bike rack would be good. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people with bicycles there. So,
I was going to add that if you find a need for bicycle racks, will you provide them? Yes. There any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, nay. The request is approved. Second request, 521.2C. Building exteriors and roofs constructed of traditional materials such as wooden clapboards, shingles, patterned shingles, brick or stone, synthetic materials require planning board approval. The applicant proposed wood composite siding and rubber roof. May I have a motion to approve this request?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve this request. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The request is approved. The third request for waiver, 521.2.D1-3. Traditional roof forms such as hip, gambrel, or gable shall be required. The gradient from level of any sloped roof shall be at least 4 to 12. Flat roofs may be permitted if decorative details are incorporated into the roof design and/or the roof is designed to incorporate a slope design for the portion of the roof visible from the public way, and provided that any mechanical equipment installed on the roof is not visible from the public way and abutting properties. A flat roof is proposed. May I have a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
A motion is made and seconded to approve this request. Is there any discussion?
Just a reminder about screening.
I hope you noticed that I read that very carefully so that you would hear it very carefully. It's very important that you do something with this. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, so we've been clear about it on what we'd like to see there. So what you just said, though, Paul, kind of piqued my interest. You read it slowly, and you're hoping they got the message, but we want to see something. So we're sitting here willing to approve this, or allegedly, I'm assuming we're going to move this forward. But are we expecting them to come back with something?
They have to, this is for master plan.
I know.
approval
Are
only.
we expecting them to come back with something?
Can I just add, I just confirmed with Paul, the architect, that the roof design has a raised cornice, a parapet, so that the actual flat roof sits lower than that cornice behind it, so that the solar panels won't be visible from the street because the flat roof section is actually recessed below the top of the cornice wall.
Well, that's good. And now you can work on the design a little bit.
So just for.
You've got the shielding down.
As I read, I mean, look at, without trying to split hairs here, you read, as we read it, we can grant such a waiver, and I think they meet two of the three kind of conditions of the, as the criteria is spelled out in the provisions, in the ordinance. So, I mean, I would like to see them do something with the roof. And I, you know, I get it, you're screening the equipment, you're screening the panels. My initial, when we did the site visit, as I walked to the property, the thing that stands out to me is the 8-pitch, 12-pitch, whatever it is on the atrium or the caretaker's apartment, whatever it is. But that stands out as being a nice architectural feature. I think it can be incorporated in some capacity, maybe simply at the parapet, some type of a pitched roof there would, I think, at least be consistent with what's already existing there. That was my comment on the site visit. It's my comment today. I'll support the waiver tonight with the condition, I guess further condition, that they make an attempt to come back with something at preliminary.
Yeah, I would second that. I don't think you have to copy what's on the existing building, but it would be nice if it's compatible with the existing building. And leave it to your architectural design capability to come up with a good one.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for the chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
We've approved the zoning variances and the waivers.
Oh, no, we haven't voted on this last waiver.
Well, I know we're going to get there, but do we need, after we get done with that, do we need an overall vote on the master plan
Yeah.
approval?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We have
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the third waiver request?
And just so I'm clear, that would be subject to an additional condition that the roof design be revisited at preliminary plan.
Yeah, yes, subject to that condition.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved. The request is approved. I will just note, before calling for a motion for master plan approval, that there's a comment here that there could be additional waiver requests in the preliminary plan, so just keep that in mind. So with that, may I have a motion for master plan approval of the proposed project?
Master plan approval.
Subject to.
So you've got the 7
Hold on a
required
sec.
findings,
Subject
which
to the,
I don't
Subject
know.
to the required findings, the recommended conditions of approval from the TRC.
So the
plus the
condition,
con-
so those 3 conditions, and we just added a 4th
Just added,
condition.
yes.
Yep,
yes.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
That's it. Okay, so may I have such a motion, please?
Motion made to cover those contingencies and subjects for master
Seconded.
plan approval.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Master plan approval is approved. Congratulations, good luck with the
Yes.
project.
Yep.
Yeah, nice job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Paul.
What's that?
So we're in overtime.
Turn over
But
time.
we got a couple of things to do yet. Don't,
That's right.
We've got what?
Motion to
we have a
adjourn.
couple of, oh, no.
Don't you worry.
Dogs that have to be let out.
Please take your discussion outside. We still have some business to conduct. Thank you.
I tried.
With the permission of the applicant, I would like to receive a motion to continue item 5D.
Motion to continue.
Second.
A motion to continue item 5D has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just, we would note the date that it's going to be continued to January 12th.
Yes, I'm sorry, to the January 12th meeting.
Is that the Welch?
Yes.
I need to recuse, so I'm,
Oh,
I got the form, yeah.
okay, you have to go off the dais, too.
Right.
Go to the penalty box. We'll see that later.
What was that, 5D?
5D.
Okay.
We note that Member Nash has recused himself. May I have a motion to continue item 5D to the January 12th meeting?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued. Item 5E, nothing has been received on that, is that correct?
Right, we were working with the developer over the last few days to try to get the cost estimates finalized and to the town engineer for a recommendation.
So we should continue this to January 12th?
I don't have the recommendation from the town engineer yet, so yes, you should continue it.
Okay, so may I have a motion to continue item 5E to the January 12th meeting?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the January 12th meeting.
Was there one person recused?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill recused himself.
Okay.
The next item is item 4F. Town council requests that the planning board research adopting an ordinance, requiring Esplanade-style sidewalks. We have not yet received a draft. Is that correct?
We have the referral from the town council requesting...
No, this,
Yeah, well,
oh, I'm sorry, I read the wrong, no,
Which item are you on?
we're doing 4F, the Esplanade-style sidewalks.
All right, I was on 5F. Okay, that's the solicitor.
yes.
Nothing has yet been received.
Continue this to January.
Yeah.
We'll have a,
Yes, so may I have a motion to continue item 4F to the January 12th meeting?
Motion made.
second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item 4F is continued to the January 12th meeting. The next item is item 5F, request of the town council for review and recommendation on parking requirements for residential use.
What is that?
Looking, well, what we have are the memos that were sent to us. And they're looking for an ordinance to address what constitutes a parking space, I guess.
I think we looked at that, didn't we?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So
But
this
my suggestion is that we give this to the parking subcommittee.
Well, we're looking at it.
I think we actually started talking about it.
We talked about it, but it was prior to getting this request from the town council. So this is
right.
a specific request relative to parking standards in residential districts for,
Yeah.
well, they're talking about single-family residential, but we can look at residential
I
generally.
think we've been doing that though, Paul.
So
It's just a matter of,
can you make a recommendation to the planning board for the next meeting?
yeah, well, we actually tried to meet,
Next-
actually, we're meeting again
I think we're meeting on the
next week?
on the
17th.
17th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
I think
I may have a conflict.
All right.
Our approach is there'll be absolutely no parking in the town. Everybody will be bussed in from the driveway.
Do we need a motion for this, or can I
I would,
just
yeah, I would make a motion just to refer it to the subcommittee.
do it in a motion form?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, may I have a motion to refer this to the parking committee to make a a recommendation on this subject at our next meeting, January 12th?
Who's on the parking committee?
Parking committee is Bill and Art. and
So
Joe.
far, Joe's on it as well.
Joe, that's right, four
And
people.
John.
John, four people,
Yeah.
yeah. May I have that motion, please?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to refer this to the parking subcommittee for a recommendation to be given to the planning board at their January 12th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Very quickly, on the updates, any comments on the project updates document? My only comment is that you're still waiting for information from the finance department.
Yes, correct.
I don't know. We may go
A lot
round,
of money out there.
we go round and round on it. They've been busy, okay. We actually had written reports from the Tree Commission and the Conservation Commission. We sort of had a report from the Use Table Committee and Parking Committee. Anything on open space and fields?
Valley Trail expansion, contract was let, to the East Coast Construction Company. First phase of trail expansion, okay, that's the first phase of the trail expansion. And there's talk about an east-west bike path across Middletown. And then Paradise Park, this Northeast Tree Company is cutting a trail into the Paradise Park area. Just talk about a dog park, but they want to get a subcommittee, together for that. Well, I mean, they don't want to do it, they want somebody else to do it,
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else to be brought up before the meeting?
Yes. Tonight, we voted on a little piece of paper that talked about continuances. It also says we stop work at 9 o'clock.
Off the clock.
No, not really. It says that we don't start
yeah.
an application after 9
You want to change
So-
that, Art? You can change
We
it.
did it, okay.
So I think, I've
Let's
got to talk to
change it.
finance, and we'll get our pay jacked up with OT.
Yeah, do some overtime.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Me.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Peter.